like to call this meeting of the Prescott Unified School District Governing Board to order. Welcome to all of you who are here this evening. Thank you for coming. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, and it's right behind me. No wonder I can't find it. Lily, you want to do this tonight?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You should have received a copy of the agenda. We are anticipating that our fourth board member will be here. Cara is not here this evening, but I'm hoping that Connie will be here soon. But you should have received your agenda. Any additions, changes? Could I get a motion for approval?
I motion that we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is approved. Likewise, the minutes came to you in your packet. Were there any changes or corrections to the minutes? Okay, could I get a motion to approve those?
I move that we approve the minutes from the regular study and voting session meeting of September 7th, 2021 as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes from the regular study and voting session meeting of September 7, 2021 as presented. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Excuse me. We are looking forward this evening. You probably have noticed that we're somewhere other than where we usually are. And first of all, Alexa is here to share with us. I asked Alexa if she could put together for us a presentation or a list or whatever of all of the mitigations and steps that we are taking and have taken to try to keep COVID under wraps in our district. And so, lovely person that she is, she's here to do that. Thank you, Alexa.
Thank you, Deb. Good evening, PUSD board. Alexa Scholl, your district health and safety coordinator. I'm going to give you a little bit of a snapshot of kind of our prevention and response to COVID-19. In addition, at the end, I'll kind of wrap up with my normal monthly update on our dashboard and also how our community metrics are looking. So I categorized this evening's presentation into two categories. We have things that we're doing to prevent COVID-19 from being on our campuses and preventing spread. But at the same time, we're also responding to students and staff testing positive and also seeing evidence of some COVID spread happening on our campuses. So we're doing our best to prevent that, but then when it does happen, we have things in place to respond to that as well. First is in prevention is healthy environments. One thing you hear a lot about is ventilation. There are things that we're somewhat limited in. As you'll see, we're in a completely internal room with no external doors, no external windows. And so we do have some classrooms that are limited, but one good thing is all of our HVAC systems are running as best they can. So, and their filters were changed over the summer. So they're pulling in 10% fresh air and we're circulating 90% air. In our classrooms that do have exterior doors and windows, we're encouraging teachers and staff to open those, to get outside when they can, and to do our best to bring fresh air into our classroom spaces. Cleaning and sanitizing, we're keeping up with our regular cleaning and sanitizing in partnership with SSC. So teachers still have Virex and rags available in their classroom. Our janitors are doing a great job of hitting high-touch areas throughout the day, and then SSE comes in the evening and does their normal cleaning procedures. We do know from being in a pandemic now for more than 18 months that COVID really doesn't spread from touch. We're trying to keep our environments healthy, but focus more on respiratory hygiene than touch hygiene because we know that it just really doesn't spread through touch. And then outdoor spaces, we purchased some pop-up tents to move classrooms outdoors, encourage teachers to take their classes outside when the weather is beautiful as it is in fall here in Prescott. We also are continuing our partnership with the Nature Center, getting kids out of the classroom and into nature. And that's a great way to mitigate the spread of COVID. Being outside is much safer than being inside, and so we're continuing to encourage staff and teachers to get students outside when it's feasible. A lot of the times when we're doing staff meetings or quick one-on-ones or meeting with families, anytime we can move to a virtual platform, it just makes it that much safer for everyone involved. Adjustments to field trips and events. So we are doing field trips this year, which is really exciting. That was something we didn't really do last year. And so when we're doing them, we're just thinking about what they look like. How many buses do we need? Are we taking chaperones who aren't staff members? Just thinking about those things to make field trips doable, but also safe, especially for our K-4 kiddos who we know are not eligible to get vaccinated yet. We need to take extra precaution to keep them safe and not expose them outside of school. Cohorting as feasible. We're seeing this more at our K-4 levels where you can keep a kid in one classroom. It's more difficult when you're changing classrooms 6 times a day, but I would say Stephanie Hill at Absenteeism has done a great job cohorting. In fact, she's got it down in such a great system that every room that a student is in, it's the same seating chart. So in their primary classroom, same seating chart as music, as art, as the lunchroom. So when we do get a positive pop-up, we're only having to quarantine a few students because they haven't been exposed to a ton of students throughout the school day. So that's really great. And it really came in handy the other day when we had a positive pop-up, unfortunately, and really it was only 2 or 3 students quarantined. So that was really handy. Reducing visitors. We are allowing visitors and volunteers back on campus, but in a reduced capacity, trying to be safe, asking them to monitor themselves for symptoms, communicate with us about being sick, but we know that our volunteers are a really big part of our PUSD community, so we're welcoming them back this year. Sorry, out of breath with my mask on. Preventative hygiene. We're encouraging mask wearing, which many of us are doing this evening. We are not requiring them, but highly encouraging them, and they're also available to students if they do need one. Hand and respiratory hygiene. We're still, you'll see hand sanitizer, around schools. It's very available. We're encouraging it. And then also respiratory hygiene, keeping kids from coughing on each other, sneezing into their elbow, using tissues, just that kind of stuff. Temperature taking. We're temperature taking when it makes sense. Some schools are doing it more than others. And it's a way just to catch a quick fever if a kiddo is showing fever. And then our parents have been doing a great job of keeping sick kids home, and that's really key to keeping COVID off our campuses. So huge shout out to our families for letting us know when they're sick. We're happy to give guidance, and that is really key to keeping spread off of our campuses and just keep kids home. Even if it's just a little something and you don't, if they feel okay, if they're showing any signs of illness, it's critical that people are keeping their kids home. Testing. This is new this year and really exciting. So we're doing testing 3 days a week at Mount High, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Mondays and Wednesdays it's in the afternoon from 3:30 to 4:30. Friday we're there in the morning from 8 to 9. This is in partnership with the Yavapai County Community Health Services. They have just been an excellent partner in this. Really, we couldn't have done this program without their support. I'm there every day as well as their Vista AmeriCorps employee, and then they also have volunteers. And so we're able to provide any family, student, staff member, anyone who has a relationship to PUSD, we can provide them with a rapid test, 15 minutes, to get the result, and they're on their way. And one thing that's been really critical with this testing is when we have students who are quarantined, they can test on day 6 or 7 of quarantine and return to school on day 8. And with having it available 3 days a week, it ends up that one of those testing opportunities lands on their day 6 or 7, so they can come to us, get a test for free. If they're negative and asymptomatic, they can head back to school. And so we know that quarantining is a burden on families, and so we're happy to provide this free service to get their kids back sooner if they're quarantined. A new thing that we just started last week is our pool testing program, and I'm really excited about this. This is in partnership with the Arizona Department of Health Services. Arizona got $220 million in federal funding just for COVID testing in schools. And so we launched it at Lincoln School with both students and staff, at our transportation and facilities departments, just staff there. We're going to launch it after break at Discovery Gardens, just staff. Pre-K students are not eligible for the program. And then I'm hoping to also have it at the district office. And so how this works is you take up to 25 swabs and you put them in one test tube, and they're tested as one sample. So you get one test result for all up to 25 test results, or for test samples. And it's a PCR, it's the gold standard of COVID testing. It tests on a molecular level. So if we get a positive pool back, we can then rapid test everyone that was in that pool quickly and find out who that positive person is and isolate them so that they're not around their peers and potentially spreading COVID. And so at Lincoln, we did it last week on Wednesday, and all of our pools came back negative. So we know that those students and staff who tested don't have COVID. And one reason I'm so excited about this is because it's the gold standard of COVID testing. These are expensive tests. These are about $100 a pop if you were going to go get them at the county health department or somewhere else. And this is free to us, so you can get a great weekly PCR COVID test for free. And just that extra level of confidence that you weren't sick and your peers aren't sick and COVID isn't on our campuses. So it went well at Lincoln. We're going to see how it goes, and if we feel like it's helpful and it's giving us more information, we may consider launching it to other schools as well. And then lastly, rapid tests are also available at our schools for staff. So all of our principals and some of their administrative staff have been trained in administering rapid tests, and this is really helpful. Because sometimes one of our teachers might wake up with just a little stuffy nose or just a little something where in a normal year they would power through it. But with COVID, they just want to make sure that they're not sick with COVID. And so they can come into school, get a rapid test, and if they're negative, they can feel more confident going into their classroom that day. So that's been really helpful for our principals to have access to that. Also, one thing that we've been really proactive in, and I'm really proud of, our vaccine clinics. So last year, we did vaccine clinics for PUSD staff in January and February. And then over the summer, in June and July, we did 2 clinics for anyone who wanted to come, PUSD students, families, or staff. That was when Pfizer was then available to those 12 and older, so we wanted to make sure that families knew where they could get their kiddos vaccinated before school started. Right now, on the books, we have an October clinic for a booster shot for our staff. We're waiting for some guidance from the FDA and CDC on this. As you probably saw, they approved the Pfizer booster shot, but up here in Yavapai County, we got the Moderna shot. So we want to make sure we're getting some guidance, but we have that tentatively scheduled, and I'm hoping we hear something pretty quick here from the FDA or CDC. And then lastly, we're keeping the options open for potential clinics once there's an EUA for 5 to 11-year-olds if families want to get their younger kids vaccinated. So we've made that service available, and it's not required. It's just something that we want to make available to families if that's the right choice for them. So that was all the prevention stuff. Kind of moving on to the response stuff. You all approved several new staffing positions, which I think was really smart and has really kind of helped our district respond and deal with COVID. And one is my position, Health and Safety Coordinator. So I've been with the district a little over a year now. And so I kind of been the point of contact for all things COVID and helping our administrators and our nurses deal with COVID when it pops up on their campus. And then we recently added 2 new positions, student support liaisons. And so we have Darcy, who is stationed here mostly at the high school, and then Shelley, who has a space at the district office, but she also travels around to our other schools. And their positions are really to support families when their students are quarantined. We know that when a family has a student who's quarantined, that's a hardship on them to have to keep their student home for a number of days. And so we're trying to support them the best we can. And so Darcy and Shelley, their purpose is to make sure that the families have Chromebooks,
have schoolwork. We're able to provide them with breakfast and lunches if that's something that they need, and really just be another person that's checking in on them and making sure they're doing okay and that their student is able to keep up on work while they're quarantined at home. And they've also kind of stepped into some other roles and just been another person on campus able to help when we need a body. You'll see Darcy often at the front desk here at the Prescott High School answering phones, buzzing people in, talking to families. So it's been a real blessing to have them both here with us. In response, we've also been contact tracing and quarantining students. When we know we have a student who tested positive, we immediately begin contact tracing and we quarantine any close contacts. This year, though, we have some reduced quarantine timelines. So last year, you probably remember, it was 14 days, no exceptions. You were home for 14 days. This year, if a family does not want to get their student tested for COVID, they just have to stay home 10 days and can return on day 11. Or if a family is willing to get their student tested, often at one of our testing events at Mile High, they can get tested on day 6 or 7 of quarantine and then return on the 8th day as long as they have no symptoms and they tested negative. We've also had some flexibility about who is quarantined. We really wanted to prioritize quarantining the most vulnerable at-risk students. And so at our upper levels, many of our students are vaccinated and they are excused from quarantine. We've also been able to excuse students from quarantine who have previously had COVID. And this was really helpful. This was in partnership with the county health. We got some guidance from them that students who have previously had COVID, even if it was more than 90 days ago, are less likely to get COVID again. And so we're able to excuse them from quarantine. And so that really helped us in those first couple weeks of school when we had a high volume of COVID cases. And at one point, we had almost 300 students quarantined. So the more students we're able to excuse that we feel are healthy, can be in our classrooms, the better it is for those students and also for teachers and all around just a better situation. And so that's been really helpful, and we haven't seen really any issues with that in terms of allowing someone back who then tests positive for COVID. Nurse support. We have several staff members, including myself, who are able to help with COVID-related calls. That's can be a big volume of work for our nurses when they get a number of calls throughout the day about a family who either the student tested positive or someone at home. And so we're able to kind of disperse that and assist with them with that so that they're able to do their normal nursing duties, which is a lot of work without COVID. We have some volunteers lined up and trained to help with other nursing duties. That includes our hearing and vision screenings, data input. There's a lot that we are able to train nurses on, or nurse volunteers on, to assist our nurses. And then also we have kind of a lead on a possible AmeriCorps Vista position. And so that's kind of a volunteer position. They have to do 300 hours of volunteer work through AmeriCorps Vista. They do get a small stipend, and so we may have that person join us to, again, help our nurses, help with COVID calls, and just be another person able to take on some of the COVID caseload. And then communications. This has been a big, probably a really big focus this year, is just communicating information best we can so that families feel like they have a clear understanding of what's going on in our schools. So we added the Medical Advisory Council this year. That was a group of professionals from the county health, pediatricians, epidemiologists, a couple of our nurses, and they were kind of a group that we have been updating semi-regularly, and if we feel like we need to make a change, they may be able to help us make some recommendations for any policy changes that we may need to make to help mitigate COVID. Luckily, we haven't felt like we've needed to change anything too drastically, and so we've just kind of been keeping them in the loop about what's going on. But they're also a resource of medical professionals that we can kind of tap into. Our COVID-19 dashboard, we had this last year. I kind of rejuvenated it and based on some feedback, which was really great, and so that's updated twice weekly. That's available on prescottschools.com under the COVID-19 information tab. We have a health and safety website that I keep updated with information about where to get tested, quarantines, anything COVID-19 is you're going to find on that website. You all adopted the health and safety guidelines for the 21-22 school year. That's available on the health and safety website and is just another tool for us to go to in terms of our COVID-19 procedures and protocols. we got some letters from the county health department that were really helpful, especially in those early weeks when we were having to quarantine a number of students. We ran into families who didn't feel that quarantining was necessary, and so the county was able to provide us with letters really explaining why we are required to quarantine. It is a requirement from county health that we contact trace and quarantine students. And so that was really helpful and just outlined kind of in layman's terms why quarantining is necessary when we're made aware of a positive COVID case. School newsletters, our principals send out weekly updates to families, and they're able to include testing information and all sorts of COVID information that's coming directly from principals to families. And then lastly, we regularly communicate with staff, whether it be in their all-staff meetings, or I email information out, principals are emailing information out, and so we just want our staff, our families, and students to feel like they have the information to make decisions about their personal risk and ask questions. So that's been a huge focus this year, is just communicating information out to families, students, and staff. And that is all I have for you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Couple.
Go
If
for
you're
it.
okay. So, Alexa, how are you and everybody else doing as far as the communication goes with families and things? I mean, I know it's been overwhelming at times, but it seems like things are settling somewhat.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was a challenge at the beginning of the school year. I mean, we started school with already having 14 positive cases, and then at our peak, I want to say we were at 62. At one time. So that was in up to 300 students being quarantined. So that was a large volume, but it's definitely, we're kind of on this downward projection. And in fact, we have less positives now than we did when school started. So we're seeing a definite decline, and I hope that trend continues. But, you know, I guess communication was challenging at the beginning, just making sure that families had all the information, but that's kind of why we brought on those student support liaisons, was to be another person who can answer questions if families felt like they needed more information.
Good. And then I guess a couple of others. The potential EUA for 5 to 11, do you think there's interest among families in the district?
I do. I think there's some who that's
Good.
As soon as that happens, they'll be getting their kiddos vaccinated.
Okay.
And, you know, that's a family's choice. Again, we don't require vaccines,
Right.
but if it's available and families feel that's the right thing, I think there's a segment of our families who will. We've also seen a number of students at the high school get vaccinated, and sometimes it's because they don't want to miss out on athletics, or there's things they don't want to miss out on, and so being vaccinated excuses them from quarantine and also is another layer of protection for themselves.
Good. So it seems like those numbers are increasing at least.
Yeah, you know, I don't have any hard evidence or hard numbers to give you, but anecdotally it seems like at the high school at least we're seeing, you know, I would say maybe a third of the students who are identified as close contacts end up being vaccinated or they've previously had COVID. Okay.
And last question, do you have any idea what the rate of quarantine students that test positive is?
I don't have hard numbers. I mean, we see them. It's, I don't know, Marty, do you have any? It's hard to, like,
It has been hard to track hard numbers on how many close contacts become positive, but there are enough that, and it's also hard to track where they have gotten it.
Sure. Yes,
but
exactly.
If you assume that they weren't exposed somewhere else, it's enough that we feel like there is spread within the school. But when I got to be the temporary health and safety coordinator, I would say it was maybe an eighth of the close contacts. It wasn't very many, and it was often a close contact that was like they were sitting across from each other at a table rather than like this.
Okay. So more face-to-face type.
Face-to-face or like a good buddy that they eat lunch with.
I was going to add that we also see close contacts becoming positive, but they're friends. They see each other outside of school.
Yeah.
So, and it is difficult to know 100% with 100% certainty where someone got COVID. I mean, we can ask questions like, is anyone else at home sick? You know, are folks at home vaccinated? Was there a known exposure outside of school? And we can kind of assume that they got it at school, but you don't know for 100% certainty. That's just the nature of dealing with a virus like COVID.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions?
And then I just wanted to, I told you I was going to give you my normal monthly update. So our metrics, unfortunately, did increase this last week. We're at 250 cases per 100,000 with a 15.5% positivity for Yavapai County. That is up from weeks prior. We were kind of seeing a decrease, and unfortunately we ticked up. However, I don't know if we've seen that reflected in our classrooms with the steady decrease we've seen. And then we have 7 active cases at the moment. That's the least amount of cases we've had all school year. And we did go 3 days without a new case, which is our record so far.
I do have
Yes.
questions, Alexa. I just wanted to give everybody else a shot first. Do we have any idea how many of our students are wearing masks?
We don't track that hard number. I think it depends on the school. I would also say it ebbs and flows. We are putting this information in front of families because at times when there's a lot of cases, they may want to put a mask on their kiddo, and then when there's no cases at their school, they may feel more comfortable with their student not wearing a mask.
So Adam, how many of your students are wearing masks?
Oh, my goodness. That is a really challenging question. I do agree that it depends on the day,
Yeah.
it seems. I would have said that a couple weeks ago when we were having a little bit higher number of cases, I would have told you there was probably, out of our 1,400, I'd guess maybe 400 to 500 kids who had them on.
Okay.
I've seen that maybe drop off a little bit over the last couple weeks, in my
All
opinion.
right, thank you. Stephanie?
We are nowhere close to that. I can tell you that in the classrooms that I go in, like for example, I was in almost every classroom today, I would say at most 3 to 4 kids in a classroom. So our percentage is much,
Yeah.
much lower. And, you know, like Alexa said, we have a pretty good plan and process that we
Yeah.
manage it. But even that being said, when I would send a letter, because we had 3 cases in one class, but they all sat at the same little
Yeah.
quad of table or desk, I did not see an increase in that class of
Okay.
mask wearing whatsoever.
I do want to thank you for your creative cohort plan. That's terrific. I'm glad to see that we're putting an emphasis on the respiratory prevention, because yes, that seems to be where the danger is. Likewise, most of our staff, most of our teachers and staff are vaccinated. And from everything I hear, one of the best things we can do is surround students with vaccinated adults so that we're not bringing that into them. What is the benefit of pool testing?
It gives us information about, there's several things. One, like when we get it last week, when all of our pools were negative, that gives me a level of confidence that Lincoln's probably in okay shape right now. I mean, we only had about 50 students and staff total tests, but out of those 50, none were positive. That's a great thing to know. That's great information to have. And then when we do get a positive pool, we can give those rapid tests, and oftentimes someone may be asymptomatic and positive. And so if we can identify that person and remove them from the classroom, the chance of them spreading to other students and staff is a lot lower. So it's really just information. It's having information, and then when your pools come back negative, feeling confident that there is a good chance that COVID isn't on your campus right now.
And like you say, a chance to catch those asymptomatic cases that
Yes.
might spread.
And I think it's important to add, this is kind of an experiment right now. Lincoln, offered to be kind of our guinea pig, and we're going to see how it goes and family buy-in and how our families feel about it. And if we find it to be successful, like I said, we might grow it. If we don't find it successful, or if we don't find the information particularly useful, we have no commitment to continue it. I mean, it's a completely free program to us. We didn't sign a contract. And so we're able to kind of do with it what we want. But we thought that this is available to us. It's one more thing that we can do to try to mitigate spread, and why not give it a shot?
Okay. And I know there is no real answer to this question, but how can we determine how effective our mitigations are? I mean, I'm not looking for an exact.
Yeah. I mean, it's challenging because there are many things that affect whether or not there's COVID in your classrooms. And part of it is our community metrics and how prevalent it is in our community. And there isn't a whole lot that we can do to affect the prevalence in our community. I think we're doing what we can with what we have. You know, like I said, we're limited in ventilation. There's some things that we just simply can't do. But then when we can, we are doing those things. And so I don't know how you measure per se, because we don't know, you know, we don't know if someone has COVID and then how many kids around them did or didn't get it necessarily. So it's a difficult thing to measure, but you know, we're keeping an eye on best practices, recommendations from the CDC, AZDHS, county, or peer schools, what they're doing, how successful they are. And so, I mean, I feel confident and comfortable that we are doing what we can, and we've been successful in keeping our schools open, even when we did have 60 cases and 300 students quarantined.
So did you not tell us that we have gone down considerably from where it was?
We have, but I think you also see that reflected in the prevalence in our community. I mean, coming out of July and into August, it was very, very prevalent in our community, and so it kind of makes sense that we would then see that in our classrooms, especially once you get, you know, in Adam's case, 1,400 students back into one single building.
Okay. Would you please send your PowerPoint to the board
Absolutely.
so we can share that with people who might have questions for us?
Yes.
Mine's not very quantifiable, but I can see it in the principal's eyes.
I would like to share, I think one of the mitigation things that we've done that has really helped the community as a whole is our testing events at Mount
Yeah.
High. That just is giving knowledge to families. It's, you know, folks who have been exposed and concerned about getting it come, people that want to get out of quarantine. You know, it's just been, how many do you think we have on average drop in a day, and about how many end up positive, do you think?
I would say on a good busy day, we get about 50 to 60. On a slow day, we're probably about 30. Friday mornings are kind of our slowest usually. On our peak day, we did almost 100 tests. And I would say on average, we're probably between 5 and 10% positivity at those events. And sometimes they're not surprises. I think that's important to remember. Like, sometimes people know they're positive and want to come and get another test, or they work, you know, their husband or wife at home has it, and so a lot of times it's not a surprise to people. They're just coming to get the information. That way they know for certain.
But that's a terrific number.
And they are, most people are so grateful.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we thank them for being cautious. Yesterday, many families we had a sore throat, we woke up with sniffles, we got a cough, and they just want to know.
Yeah.
And they're just thankful for the service, they really are.
And I think it's better now, but I would say in the first couple weeks of schools, because the prevalence of COVID in our community was so high, it was very difficult to even get a COVID test. Places were out of rapid tests, places were booking up their PCR test appointments like super fast, or if they got one, it would take 3 to 5 days to get results. And so that was really challenging for us because we weren't getting the information, families weren't getting the information and weren't able to pass it on to us. So having that instantaneous, available 3 days a week, no appointment, completely free, has been a huge resource to the district, but also for families.
Yeah, I have 2 comments written down, and Marty, you spoke to one of them. It's just I really appreciate the rapid testing and the fact that I think it benefits the whole community, not just the families, because now they know and they're able to reduce that. And so my question to that specifically is just, are we able to project how long we'll be able to sustain that service?
For now, we're planning till the end of October. I think it will depend on the demand. We're starting to see kind of a slowdown. We're still getting a good 30 to 40 people each day, sometimes more, especially once we get a little wave of quarantines. We'll see on a specific day a bunch of kids coming to test out of quarantine. And so right now we're going through October. I think closer to the end of the month, we'll kind of analyze what that looks like for the next month. The other kind of challenge that we're going to be facing is the weather. We really like doing these events outside. It's a much safer environment. There's been 2 kind of rainy days where we moved into the cafeteria, which is doable. It just doesn't feel as safe when you have sick people coming into a space and having to share a space with other people. So we'll kind of have to think about that and how we work through that. But I think probably next month when I see you guys, I'll have a better idea of how long we're planning that.
But right now we're good through fall break and then.
Yes, and it's available over fall break. I wanted to mention that. We're still doing testing Monday, Wednesday, and Friday next week. So we wanted that available for families if they are traveling and want to come back and get a test just to make sure, or if they don't feel good, that's available over break.
The other question I had written down is just I was curious if you could speak to the severity of symptoms. So we're seeing positivity within our school community, and are you aware, generally speaking, of how it's affecting people and their overall health? Is it mainly asymptomatic and kind of cruise through it, or are we seeing staff and students being affected in pretty deep ways?
I would say generally speaking with our students, they fare pretty well. One challenge that we've had with the Delta variant, is it often presents very mildly. So it's just feels more like a mild cold or just allergy symptoms. And sometimes it's just a day or two. So I would say generally speaking, our students fare pretty well. I know of one student who is experiencing long COVID and is now on like 8 weeks from her infection and is still having symptoms and dealing with the effects of long COVID. So we are seeing that rarely. We did have a bus driver pass away at the beginning of the school year from COVID. So we know that when our staff get it, sometimes it's more severe, depends on their underlying conditions. But I would say with students, generally they fare pretty well. But we do see severe cases.
And are we seeing vaccinated folks get Delta?
Yeah, we've seen a handful of staff who have been vaccinated, and then I know of at least one student who was vaccinated who also got COVID. So it happens, and that's to be expected with any vaccination. It's not bulletproof, but the ones, it's a way to protect yourself if that's what you choose.
Thank you.
I'll ask one other question. So I'm not a math major.
Neither am I.
But if you say we're in the community 250 per 100,000, and you take our numbers of 7 active cases right now, is that district-wide?
Yes.
Of roughly 4,500 students, faculty, staff. So that's about 100. If you just do straight math, Adam, that's like 155 per 100,000.
Right, yeah, and
so what level does that put PUSD at?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
On a scale, versus 250 out of 100,000.
Gotcha.
What is that, 155?
Yeah, I'd have to do some conversions and math on that. But the thing that's useful about the 100,000 metric is it's a way to compare schools or regions or cities apples to apples. So like if you were to look at Maricopa County, that county is huge. So if you would compare the number of cases per day for Maricopa to Yavapai, it would of course look like Yavapai is faring much better. So you need to put it on an equal playing field, and that's what that does. I don't know what our cases per 100,000 is without doing some math.
Yeah, it's probably more math than I can do on my phone calculator right here, but,
I thought it was good.
Okay.
But I can get that information to you if that's something you're interested in.
I'm interested just to kind of know, like, at what level do we need to make any changes, I guess. If things continue on a positive direction, you know, and we're saying 5 to 10% positivity. I guess the other question is, where are these, if this 250 per 100,000 is Yavapai County-wide, and most of the most vulnerable people have been vaccinated now, where is this coming from? Is it in a population the ages of 19 to 25? Is it, I'm just curious. I guess I'd like to know more about where is it?
Mm-hmm.
And how do we prevent our kids and our families from getting it? If there's any other methods that we can take to prevent that spread from happening, you know? That's, I guess, what I'm curious about, so.
Well,
there
that
may
might be good to
be
get
an answer.
Leslie Horton to come
I
in
would
and
just,
check in with us, because she's looking at that whole big picture.
Yeah, and I would say the 5 to 10% positivity rate at our testing events, that isn't always students. That can be
Okay,
grandma that they brought, or a
Right.
friend, or right now we've been working with a group home who's kind of had a little bit of an outbreak, so they've been coming and testing, and
Okay.
so, you know, it's not necessarily always students.
right,
Yeah.
yeah,
If we're talking 4,000 staff and students, we have 7,
Mm-hmm.
that converts to about 175 per
Okay.
1,000. So
Okay.
lower than what
yeah.
100,000 is as a county.
Alexa, I would like to thank you for all the work you've done and are doing, and Marty,
I'm back
who
up.
filled in, and our nurses and our administrative people who are working their tails off to try to keep this under control. So, thank you to all of you for doing that.
Thank you, and I'll make sure to get these slides to you guys.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy.
Ladies, we told you we would give you an opportunity to respond to anything you might have to say about COVID and how we're doing things and so on. Any comments that you have?
I do feel that there are less cases in our classrooms, or at least in my classrooms that I have. I don't think anyone has tested positive so far that I know of, or has had to go in self-quarantine. I think that a lot of the teachers are still sticking to sanitizing everything, and there's hand sanitizers available, so I think the precautions are very beneficial.
Thank you.
I did want to say, I know a lot of people aren't wearing masks in our school, but I think they are being pretty conscientious of, you know, who they're around and what they're doing. You know, if they do have a cough, they do wear a mask, and they're pretty aware about that.
Good, thank you. All right. Well, since we're in this lovely library, we're going to hear from Prescott High School this month in our effort to find out what's going on in our schools. So I'll turn it over to Principal Adam Neely.
All right, well, thank you so much. Excited to go through and tell you some of the stuff we have happening at Prescott High School. I'll be honest, I'll never be able to hit all the things happening on our campus because there's just so much. You know, we talked about 1,400 kids and all the things, but I'm extremely proud of the progress we've made this first quarter, and even more so where we're going this year. So I'm looking forward to the opportunity to share that with you, but no better opportunity than to let you speak to a couple parents and get their perspective before I take you through our school goals and all the things that we're doing. Tammy Waithman here actually has a new to PUSD student, and I thought that would just be a really exciting perspective to have for the high school. So Tammy, if you want to come on up.
Yeah, it's interesting being a new parent, having a new student at a new school. We've only been here for 2 months, so it's all brand new for us, you know, and it's kind of hard to have any kind of a criticism or anything in just 2 months. So we're still getting to know the place and getting to know the teachers and the students, and getting our bearings as a parent and my child as well. So I was asked if I could come up with a few examples of what we find that we appreciate about the school in just this short amount of time. And I have to say, lucky me, I have a kid, a student, who at the end of the school day comes to me and reports her entire day, first period through sixth period. I mean, I get the lowdown, I get it all. So I just sit there and I actively listen and I give her feedback, ask her questions. It's so much fun. But because I have a kid like this, I get an interesting insight into what the day is actually like for her, especially as a new student. So those insights, they help me understand her likes and her dislikes about aspects of learning. I get to learn about her teachers' different styles of teaching and their approaches, which I personally love to know. And her own preferred style of learning. You know, she's learning as she goes too, and I'm learning about her. And what study habits seem to work for her and what don't. So she's getting all this variety of learning, and it's giving me a lot of information on how to be a good parent too. So, but from all of this detail I get from her, I learned that of this school, I really appreciate hearing about how creative the teachers are with their lesson plans and how they incorporate multiple aspects of all the different classes that she has. She happens to enjoy art and, you know, all of that media, and she gets to use it in every class. So she appreciates having that ability. I appreciate the teacher's attention to the different styles of learning that students have. Different students have different modes that they take in better. So I appreciate knowing that they all kind of really pay attention to that too. I enjoy and appreciate the fact that she has good access to all of her teachers. They're not unreachable, you know, she can go see them at any time. I appreciate that. And finding how each of the teachers are engaging and fine-tuning their critical thinking skills. You know, I just hear from her what she learned that day and how it was presented and how she absorbed it, and it creates a discussion between us so we can really fine-tune that in her. You know, students really, we all need that, especially this day and age. So, now being a transfer student, the one thing that was, it's always hairy, I think, to go from one school to another. And that's probably the one thing, it was kind of difficult. It was challenging. So I think if there was a way that maybe we could have like on a web page or something for transfer people, you need to do this in that order, because there is a method to it. You can't just jump all over the place. You have to do this, then you can do that, then you can do that. We were kind of all over the place with that. But we jumped in and we learned. But if I had to do it all over again, oh, I would so appreciate help with that. You know, it's not an easy process, no matter where you go. But I'm that kind of person, and I need that kind of help. So that's all I have.
Do you guys have any questions or comments?
Okay.
A lot of schools do something, and I don't know if anyone's ever done any research on this, but especially the large schools, high schools, that assign a peer helper, or, you know, I mean, they do volunteer to a certain extent to, you know, the first quarter, for example, you know, have that peer helper around to answer any questions, because a lot of people don't even like to, you know, speak up about, you know, what they don't get, what they don't understand. And so I don't know if that would work here or not. I don't know if you've ever tried it or not. But it's, you know, there's another name besides helper, but it's a peer counselor, peer helper, something like that. Might be, if it comes to be a problem, you might want to try that.
Where did you all transfer from?
Within town at another
Okay.
high school. We enjoyed that school. It was North Point. We wanted it for the expeditionary aspect. I'm big on that. But it was a couple of years, and then COVID hit, and that kind of prevented all of that. And we thought it would be a good change for her, because then she gets more of a traditional high school experience, where there was a lot more variety, I would say. That was a pretty small school, but I think she's getting the best of both worlds. She got some of that, and now she's going to have this experience here. And she already is. I mean, she's thriving. She's doing wonderful.
Good.
And I couldn't be more pleased.
Good.
I couldn't be more pleased.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Okay, and then to give ourselves another perspective here, Stacy Braithwaite, who has had 4 previous PHS grads and currently has a freshman student. So Stacy.
Thank you. Shall we begin?
Yep.
So I was asked just to talk about the things that I love about PHS, and then some things that I think that we could do better. Of course, I love PHS. Okay, I love it. I love the teachers. There's amazing teachers here. I've been so happy with my kids' experiences here. Not just the teachers, but the counselors, the administrators, just great examples, great people. I do believe that this school is part of the village that my children are growing up in, and I love it. I love Prescott and Prescott High School. So number 1, I love the amazing teachers. Number 2, I'm really grateful for the safety that I feel this school has. I've mentioned it before to several people that I love the new gates. I love the office. You have to walk in one door and then sign in, and the door is locked until you enter. I really appreciate that. None of us want to think about a perpetrator or an active shooter. We don't want to think about it, but we should prepare. And I think this school is prepared for safety. The third one, I love the sports. I love the music department, the art, the various clubs. I actually contacted several other parents, moms, to ask them what they loved. And it is unanimous. We all love the sports and the music. Another mom mentioned theater, ROTC, and mountain club, bike mountain, mountain bike, whatever. Another mom mentioned that, and just how many things there are to do. The extracurricular, the math club, the S club. You all know there are just so many things to choose from here. And of course, with 4 kids having graduated, they dipped into a lot of different things. Another one I love, number 4, is communication. There's been great communication from the school. I feel the emails, the school in general, and then also the teachers when they need to contact parents. I think the emails is a great way to go, really easy. And again, I had several parents comment on the great communication. I also, throughout the years, have had a couple of teachers call me directly, and I have really appreciated that. Number 5, I'm just happy with the overall education at PHS, because not only did my first 4 children get a 4.0, but they also did really well on their ACTs, scores, and I feel like that is a representation of the teachers and the school in general. And no pressure for child number 5. We've already told her, you don't have to get straight A's, just do your best. She's like, I can't do that, but you'll be fine. She's great. And the last one is, I'm really grateful for the seminary release time for some of the kids for their religious organization. I also want to say about communication, I really like knowing the times that the PTA or PTO is having activities, because I like to participate in those. Or anytime there's a chance to volunteer, I'm grateful for that. I had another mom say she wanted to express her gratitude for allowing parents to decide for their children regarding masks and vaccinations. So I'm also grateful that my child was able to be vaccinated, and that as a guest teacher, before I began subbing this year, I was able to be vaccinated. I'm very grateful for that too. Some suggestions. I have several, but I'll try to go through them really quickly. The first one, I just want to make sure that each year we empower our students and faculty administrators to be trained in suicide prevention. QPR is question, persuade, refer. I took the course this summer, referred by a friend of a friend that had a podcast, and I said, oh, sure, I'll do it for fun. Very, very moving, very touching, very educational. Something that should be reviewed every year, I believe. So I don't know if that's something that has been done every year, but I think it's important. Number two, just informing and educating the students and the teachers and faculty about the bullying that often happens in the schools. And as a guest teacher, I have seen it. I have seen my son have issues with bullying. It's so hard. I don't want to get emotional about that, but it's hard for the kids and the parents. As well as any kind of sexual harassment or anything that's going on in the school with these kids that's hurting them. I think that they need to be safe emotionally as well as physically. Number three, I would like a little more education for, let's see, how do I say this? As an ally to the LGBTQ community, and also as a very conservative Christian, I feel like we need to be more inclusive of the kids who just have a different orientation, or they present differently, or they have a different attraction. Those are all different things, actually. I am learning so many things. I'm also a part of the PRISM Club, which was the old GSA. I know several parents who I contacted mentioned bathrooms. They have a fear of the girls' room having a transgender girl in the restrooms. So I understand their questions, their fears, their concerns. I also feel like the transgender girl needs a safe place to use the restroom. That's common decency, to allow this child to use the restroom where they can have their own privacy as well. Not just the restroom situation, but using the preferred pronouns for the kids that want to be they, them, or if they want to change their name, they should not only be allowed to change it, but change it on the rolls as well. Sometimes parents are not on board, and that is something that possibly should be discussed with the child and the administration, so that the guest teachers like myself will not call the child by their dead name and by the name they prefer. Another one, number 4, is just to have clear, written, and well-defined rules regarding social media. This includes videos, use of the phone during class time. This is very hard for me as a guest teacher. Those kids are taking out their phones out of their pockets, and they're doing this, scanning the classroom, taking videos. It is very, it makes me feel very, a little nervous, and also like my privacy, taking a video while I'm taking the roll, for example. I feel like I'm a pretty strong individual, but I feel like that's makes me not want to be a guest teacher at the school. The discipline for use of social media, I feel, should be based on the written rules and not by opinions or subjective ideas, and therefore possibly could be discriminatory. We need to see all sides of the issues before making a rash decision. as far as the kids and social media use, as well as teachers. We all want to be given the benefit of the doubt. I would want to be given the benefit of the doubt in that situation if something was used against me with social media. Okay, a couple other ones. Mom mentioned mental and emotional health of her child. Having situations that happen at the school be known through via email, so that if there's a situation where their child was affected, such as the fights. I know I didn't hear about it until I was a guest teacher, and I saw the video from a student that took the video. So I thought that was that could be something that could really affect a child negatively. Excuse me. And also a lot of parents wanted to just help their kids, help them understand what's going on in the classroom so that they can help their children. Another parent suggested more help in navigating college, navigating the ACT, SAT, scholarships, and applications. Another parent wants to know when prom is. Another parent would like cash payments to be okay at games. And another parent was wondering why honors classes are not weighted like AP classes. So overall, I mean, I did have some concerns, but really, I love Prescott High School. Badgers are, I mean, this is my hometown. This is all our hometown. I love it here. Thank you so much for the teachers and administrators for everything you do for helping these students. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so actually if we go on, we are also really lucky here because we have three amazing examples of Prescott High School Badgers right here with us as our student school board representatives. So I don't know, Mrs. Dillon, if you'd like to ask any of them questions? Or
Okay. I'm going to have each of you come to the microphone individually. We don't usually do that to you, and if you have things you particularly like here, you think are good things about the school, and if you have suggestions that you think would make it better. So Lily, let's start with you.
Thank you. I think that this year has been a rough start. We've had COVID, which has led to kind of like a slow maturity in kids that have been coming in from Mile High into PHS. But I also think that all the teachers and advisors are very supportive and understanding of the transition from Mile High to Prescott High School. I also appreciate the support that I personally get from all my teachers. I've known many of my friends have reached out to their teachers and their advisors if they need any extra support, and they have been super beneficial to their mental health and emotional well-being. I was gonna say something else. I do think I appreciate high school to me is like preparing us for the real life. So I think that the freedom and preparation we get in high school helps us in the real world. So I think that all the restrictions and rules that are necessary to be followed are helping these kids be shaped for the real world. I do think that some of the rules need to be more clarified. I know that a lot of kids have had issues with dress code, so I think we need to have clear lines. That's one thing that I've noticed. Other than that, I see many positives in our faculty. The main thing that we need to be concerned with and focus on is the maturity level and our students. So I think that they should have a voice, but also they as well need to be emotionally developed. Thank you. Thank you.
This is so like official.
So I just have a couple quick things. I did notice within our school there has been a lot of tension between like fairness versus seniority. We talked about this, we had like a heated discussion in our student council about it, versus underclassmen versus upperclassmen. A lot of the underclassmen feel like, you know, we deserve the same advantages as the seniors get. Like, for example, one of them said, at football games, they're pushed in the back of the student section, which, fair enough, like they want to be in the front too. On the seniority side, upperclassmen, they're like, we deserve the right there, we earned it, we had 4 years here, this is our turn, and you need to wait for your turn, which is just kind of like a tension between us. But one good thing I did notice though, we do have a lot of diversity I've noticed in our school within the past few years. Last year with COVID, we weren't able to like meet with a bunch of our friends and people. We only got to see them on a screen for like an hour and then switch classes, which wasn't super great, but this year we're finally like interconnecting and I get to talk to underclassmen and upperclassmen and everyone, and I just think that's super nice, and the teachers have been super accepting with our diversity, and I like that.
Sorry we made you walk so far, Camille.
Like a trek over here. I knew I had to bring this up there or I would forget what I wanted to say. Basically, Prescott High School is my favorite place to be. Like, I was able to be on the principal hiring board that we did to hire our new wonderful principal. And that's where I like it really sunk into me that I love this district and I love our school. And I love our admin and the enthusiasm they bring to our school. One thing Mr. Neely said when he was being interviewed for principal is that we have so much to be proud of. And it's so true. Because I'm in student council, I get to like talk to a lot of other student council kids throughout the state. And they're we just talk about like our traditions that we have at our school and in our community, and they're like, you have a whole homecoming parade just for your school? Like, that is so cool. Like, your city will block off roads just for you, and it really is just that community and that unity that we have here. And really, I just love this school and that the relationships admin makes with their students. It's a positive thing, that we have such a smaller scale school compared to like some of the Phoenix schools that we're able to, you know, like I can just walk into Mrs. Townsend's office and she's not always annoyed at me. She's like, what's going on, Camille? But basically, you know, I tried to think of suggestions. There's a lot of things that I don't know. It's interesting getting older into my senior year and finding out more about our school and how things work, like being on this board and seeing what goes on behind the scenes, because not a lot of students see that, and they just have these like, oh my gosh, they just have like these negative comments. I'm like, but do you really know everything? But what we talked about with admin in our student council class, like Isel said, is basically like the positive reinforcement starts with the students, that, you know, admin can do as much as they can, but it starts with leading by example. And so kind of just boosting that student morale between the leaders of our school and getting those kids to be involved, especially the underclassmen. So, yeah.
Anybody have any other comments or questions for any of our speakers?
Yeah, I do. Camille, you were talking about you know, the student council, and what is their purpose, and can anybody be on it? I know there's a balance between like a National Honor Society and student council, and so wants to be this and so wants to be that. But in your opinion, what is the purpose and the thing you like the best or feel should be better about the student council?
For sure. So if you don't know, I'm serving as student body president this year. I don't think that sounds like buzzing. But basically, you are elected into student council, which I like to view student council more as just a club. We do a lot in our school, but it's more than just planning events, you know, like we plan homecoming, prom, themes, spirit weeks, all those kind of things, but really just aligning our goals, like what students want with what admin wants, and trying to kind of like bring those together, at least in my eyes, like helping admin, like, I don't know, just aligning our goals with the social emotional support and like just boosting that student morale like I was talking about, especially with all these underclassmen who, you know, like only maybe went to like 1.5 years of middle school pretty much. Just like helping them know like high school is a fun place to be. You know, sometimes high school has a negative connotation, but it can be fun if you choose to involve yourself. And basically with the, I never touched on this, how you get in student council, you run. You're voted by your peers. We have a student body class, a senior class, a junior class, a sophomore class, and a freshman class. Each of them have 6 representatives with different positions in it. And it's pretty fun. I'm grateful that admin trusts us when sometimes we're like, can we do this? Can we do this? And they're like, okay, slow down. But it's awesome. Yeah, any other questions?
Thank you.
Not
Lily?
really. That was great. Thank you.
Do you think that, do you think that the student body and like your peers, do they view student council as like a positive part of school? Or do you think that there's like a 50-50?
For sure. That's kind of like something we work on, is creating positive relationships with students, because you know, admin's good at giving us that like positive encouragement and stuff, but when the students see something, they're just like, why'd you do this? Why is homecoming on a Wednesday? Like things like that. Kind of just, you know, like hearing their voices rather than just what we want, you know, trying to take that student input. So we definitely could work on that relationship in student council.
The challenges of leadership.
Yes, for sure.
We recognize those. All right. Mr. Neely.
Okay, well, I don't know that I can follow that in any way, because that's a powerful piece, talking to both these amazing parents and also these amazing students. So it's really nice to get that feedback and show some of what's been happening. I'll do my best to represent this, but the thing that I really wanted to talk about was our goal process. You know, we go through this trilateral goal process, balanced leadership. We put together a group of leaders from the school to come together and really talk about it. And this year, there were some moments where I was just truly amazed. I was just truly amazed and felt so appreciative of the people that I get to work with. We had some amazing moments. These things you see up here were some of the areas that we decided were really valuable pieces. I'm going to dig into some of those as we go, so I won't take you through each one. But we really talked about these things, and I was just so excited about what came out of it, because watched a group of leaders represent their peers, represent their students, and come up with things that we could do as a school to take care of our kids, to take care of our staff, to better represent Prescott in every way possible. And so one of the things that we really did land on, which was interesting, I'll tell you, historically, school goals are based on standardized testing scores. You know, they usually sit in a math and an English class, and everybody contributes to that, but I don't know that every teacher always was able to see that. And we had long discussions more about what can we better do to prepare our students for whatever they have after high school. I think we really have a history of preparing certain pockets of students very, very well. I'm not sure that we've always done everything we could to prepare every student for what comes next. And so we talked about critical thinking skills and problem solving, and we had this powerful conversation where teachers went, well, I teach critical thinking skills as this topic in my science classroom, and here's what it looks like. And we had this happen, and we went, oh my goodness, could we do this? And so our goal there is around the idea of showing growth within our content areas but with the baseline of critical thinking skills being the thing that we want to improve. Meaning that whatever topic we're teaching, I was a math teacher, so I'll go back to it, I would have gone through and I would have set a goal about the critical thinking skills it takes to solve a word problem, you know, and I could pick out in certain areas, systems of equations, doesn't matter. But my point is that I could create that, and that would be distinct to my class, but would connect to every other piece in the school. And so that really led what we wanted to do, and I think we're taking a chance. Every teacher in this building has a goal for student achievement on critical thinking skills. And so that really took us through this idea of college and career readiness, though you notice I said career and college readiness for a reason, which is we don't know what's next for a student. And so here's some examples. There's nowhere near enough to really do it, but beyond the critical thinking skill goal, I love the example that we've shifted English 12. English 12 now has a full semester on career, meaning that a senior English student is going to get career skills within their English class. Doesn't mean that every kid takes English 12. Some take English 101, some take an AP English, but the idea is that we're building that in. I used business tech mathematics, which is like a life skills course from the standard of mathematics. We talked about CTE course offerings, and now that we're offering even more CTSO, which are student organizations around career and technical education. The man who could tell us more about that's behind me over there, Cisco. We have all kinds of other options here. We've got Naviance happening in our classrooms 9 through 12. It looks different for each grade level, but it's something where they can really do some career exploration and find out their interests and what they want to do, and it can help them with college. We've got different testing. ACT is now our standardized test at Prescott High School, which is nice because, you know, that is a true something that is of value to every student if they want it to be. We've got Freshman Academy, which I'll talk about more later. So those are just some examples. We're also doing something a little different. We have committed our Fridays to intervention and enrichment. This is something that came out of the experience we had last year. There's no question that instruction was a challenge last year and that we had to prioritize. And I think that prioritizing changed the perspective of our teachers in a lot of ways. And so we've tried to run with that a little bit. And so what we're not doing on Fridays is we're not giving brand new instruction. We're not giving summative assessments. We're not making it a free day or a makeup day. Are there opportunities for kids to make up stuff they're missing on those Fridays at times? Yes, but that's not the focus. The focus is to adjust the outlook to skills over content, meaning that for years, and I was guilty of it, as a math teacher, I was like, I got to cover it all. And I think last year woke up high school teachers especially too. It was less about covering it all and more about what they walked away with, the skills they need to be successful in whatever class is next. And that's led us to conversations about cross-curricular connections, you know, how we could connect what's happening in a science classroom to a math classroom and you know, what social studies and English have in common. And so we've been working hard on some of those things. What it also is, student ownership of learning, personalizing objectives, targeted intervention opportunities, meaning that we can go through and we can use data to figure out what students need, or better yet, going back to that student ownership piece, maybe students can identify what they need and create those intervention opportunities. Student choice, student and teacher individual meetings has been a really popular early process at PHS where they're connecting with their kids. I've heard a lot of that in upper level classes where maybe there's not as much intervention need, but they're connecting with their kid, they're figuring out what's going on with their student, they're trying to make sure that they can identify, and hopefully the students walk away with a better understanding of why they're learning what they're learning. Another big piece, and you heard it mentioned multiple times, I think almost everybody who was talked about social emotional support. We are really lucky. We have 2 social emotional counselors on our campus. One is new, one has been here with us, but we are so lucky to have them. We also have the social emotional director who is here with us a portion of her week where she is a student success coach. So we've got a lot of opportunities there, but the other thing that came out of this was a social emotional team. We decided we've got to figure out how to meet the students where they are and meet their needs from this standpoint. So we put together a team. It actually grew today. But as of right now, it had 18 team members. It's teachers, advisors, counselors. We have a community member, and we have administrators on that team. We have then had really great meetings that led to us trying to put it into 4 subgroups here because we recognized that it was more than just student needs. And so we're working from the perspective of school-wide support, which is really like big picture stuff about how we identify the needs of students, at-risk students, all kinds of things that we do from a school perspective. We've got classroom support, which is talking more about those social emotional program needs that we're investigating and looking into, the Capturing Kids' Hearts pieces, family support, and teacher support. And actually, I'll be honest, we changed that today to staff support because, we're educators, but staff is a great descriptor there. I wanted to give you a look at Freshman Academy because I think that that is a true description of how we transition and orient our students to high school. We've done some things to really try and improve that this year, which is that 90% of our freshmen have it first semester, which I think is really exciting because we want to get them more than any other time in our lives do they need that right now. And so we are getting our freshmen in. They get an exploring elective second semester, a lot of which means they're staying with the same teacher, so they've got those connections. They can continue to get some of those Freshman Academy pieces within that. And so you'll notice some of the things that I gave as examples: advisement presentations, admin presentations. I mentioned Naviance, Neptune Navigate, which is really built on a digital citizenship scenario, which again is something that I heard parents mentioning, the concern of how to deal with social media and phones and all those pieces. And then they have a built-in academic advocate right there with a Freshman Academy teacher. So that's just a little bit of a little insight into what we're trying to do in those classes. And then I think every one of these pieces builds around this idea of school culture. And we've got a lot of work to do. We have kids who haven't been in school. They're reacclimating to the daily expectations. We're dealing with all kinds of things, whether that's behavior challenges, kids who are disconnected from what it takes to be successful in the classroom. I mean, there's so many different things. And we've worked tirelessly to remind students what it means to be a Badger. And so that's why I put that statement on there. Once a Badger, always a Badger. This is a positive place to be. This is a place that is safe and healthy for our students. It's not perfect. We've got all kinds of areas that we need to grow in. But we're trying to create that school culture where we, as Badgers, staff, students, community members who make their way in, we as Badgers are working to make sure that we're improving every day to help every single kid who's on this campus find whatever it is that's for them. And I say it over and over again, and I think we got some great examples of what we love about PHS. I'm a firm believer that Prescott High School can offer every student something, meaning they can find their place here. And that's what we have to do. So, I think you guys have seen this before, but these are our core covenants. One of the goals that came out was really getting this to the classroom level, meaning that we really wanted these pieces. We did a great job so far working with these as a staff. We're hoping that we can get this to the classroom level, and we got a long way to go. I'm not going to deny that. I wouldn't be standing here if I was content with what we have. I don't think I'll ever be content, but we have a long way to go with what we want to accomplish, but I'm very, very proud of the growth we've had, especially through a challenging first quarter. I'm getting all these kids back on campus and dealing with all the stuff that we deal with. But the one thing I would give you is that my perspective always is that it's not about discipline. It's about changing behavior and helping kids find their place. And that's been the thing that we've been really trying to do early on with some of the behaviors that I think some of the ladies mentioned, talking about our freshmen and reacclimating to school. We've had some questionable stuff, but the purpose has been to remind them what it means to be here, connect them to Prescott High School, connect them to other students, and help them find their place. Any questions for me? I tried to hustle. I hope I did okay. Okay.
I just want to say I think, it's really great to see from the parents and the students and from you. What I draw from it is kind of the acceptance of everybody where they're at, and commitment to diversity and inclusion that I see. I mean, I know it's always a work in progress.
It sure is.
But that's a different space than it was probably 10, 15, 20 years ago, for sure.
Yeah.
So that makes me feel really good about where you're at right now.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah.
Andy and Sarah, you were not here when Naviance was brought into
Right.
the system. And we have it at the high school, we also have it at Mile High. I would strongly encourage you to find an opportunity to come in and observe students using Naviance sometime. It is an amazing tool.
And I'm really proud of the growth we've had with that. Not only are we doing better with it, in my opinion, as a school, but I also was really pleased that our freshman academy teachers met with the Mile High teachers who use it
Yeah.
and tried to figure out, because one of the biggest complaints we heard for years was that it was repeat of some of those things that they were having happen in middle school, then they came up here in ninth grade and got the same stuff. So we've balanced some of that, so I'm excited for what that, how that can help these kids get more out of this, because there's a lot there. I bet you we're using 20% of its capacity, but we're really getting more. I think we're getting a lot more out of it right now, and I'm pleased by that.
I'm also really excited by the view of the critical thinking and overlapping it in every venue. I think that's what makes it really successful.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we got a ways to go to do it effectively.
Yeah.
We've got to keep, it's kind of that every day we get a little bit better. And so we've got some work to do to make that the reality that I think we all wanted when we walked out of here, after 2 days of working together and where we've gone as a staff. But it's happening, and I'm hearing it, which means that I'm pleased, and I think we'll continue to come back as a staff and reflect and see what we can do to improve. And
I would not be impressed, Adam, if you came in here and told me you were doing something that was already perfect.
what do you mean? No, I appreciate that. No, we will continue to grow. I can promise you that.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. Our next presentation is Martha Hellsley, who is our Student Success Coordinator. Welcome, Martha.
Okay. Well, like she said, I'm Martha Hellsley, the AmeriCorps Vista currently serving as the Student Success Coordinator here in the district. And so the Student Success Initiative began several years ago as an effort to reduce chronic absenteeism in PUSD, a task that has only become more complicated as the pandemic has continued to impact our community. So today I will give a brief background on what chronic absenteeism is, most of which you may remember from Monique, who was in this position before me, her presentation back in May of this year. And then I'll give you an idea of the state of attendance and absenteeism in the district so far this year and some of the steps that we're currently taking to support the students and the families that are chronically absent. And then lastly, I will suggest some things to the board and to the district to consider when thinking about how to grow and sustain this program beyond the AmeriCorps cycle. So chronic absenteeism measures lost opportunities to learn. So it's different from truancy in that it's excused and unexcused absences, which includes suspensions there. And it's defined nationally as missing 10% or more of enrolled school days. This could be as little as 2 days a month, and in PUSD we're almost at the end of the first quarter, so that could be just 5 days so far this year for any reason, including illness, unfortunately, this year. So research shows that chronic absence puts students at risk of not reading on grade level by 3rd grade and decreased academic performance in middle school. And research also shows that it's a better predictor of whether or not a student will finish high school than test scores are in 8th and 9th grade. So this is not just a matter of missing too much school. Chronic absence ripples into every aspect of a child's education. And the more we've worked on this issue in PUSD, the team has come to the realization that chronic absence is much more complicated than it may seem, and that it tends to be more of a symptom of underlying factors in a student's life. So things like mental health and social emotional issues, misperceptions of the importance of attendance, family emergencies and caring for family members, things like that. A lot of deeper problems going on there. And additionally, absences due to quarantine do not count towards chronic absence calculations this year. So, but these days still represent lost opportunities for a student to learn in the classroom. And students are supported by the quarantine support liaisons, but as we all know, nothing makes up for in-person synchronous instruction. So currently, here you'll see some data from the first quarter from the past 3 school years for K through 8 in PUSD. The Student Success Initiative does not currently work with Prescott High School, but the trends of increasing absenteeism are pretty much the same. So as you can see, 16% of enrolled students were chronically absent in the first quarter in 2019, and that has more than doubled to 34% in the first quarter this year. Even in 2019, that figure is relatively high. The goal is to have less than 10% of enrollment be chronically absent in a given quarter. So that 34% number is really, really high this year. We're also not hitting ideal attendance targets for other metrics. Average daily attendance has been about 90 to 92% at each of the schools so far this year, and the goal would typically be 95% of students in attendance every day. And typically the first quarter is the best for attendance, so with numbers like these, I think that we should be prepared for the following quarters to follow this trend of increased absenteeism and have plans for those students that need to miss for any reason. So some challenges that we've seen, particularly this year, we're seeing a lot more illness-related absence because COVID is still highly prevalent in our community, and there's definitely a heightened caution within our families in keeping their students home for minor illness that they may have sent them to school with in years past. Like Alexa was mentioning earlier, that is a good thing. We want them to stay home if they're not feeling well, but that is what is contributing to our high rates of absenteeism this year. We're also seeing higher rates of self-quarantine, and which so far have been higher than at any point last year, but are currently declining and are not technically absences, but are still lost opportunities for in-person instruction. As a result, we're seeing increased numbers of students struggling academically this year. There's currently 376 students in 3rd through 8th grade that are failing one or more class. That number was 310 at this point last year. This is a combination of missing school for illness and quarantine and the effects of the learning loss over the past year and a half from switching modes of education and things like that. So correcting for this situation is a major concern for the Student Success Initiative right now, and additional support is needed for many students. And while it does not go unnoticed that the students are working extra hard to correct for this lost learning that took place over the past year and a half, students are still continuing to miss in-person instruction right now. And while students are in self-quarantine, they're getting extra support from the quarantine liaisons. It's not so clear that students who are missing for illness or other medical related appointments, there's not so much of a unified system of keeping those students up to date on their education all the time. So also this missed class time has ripple effects on students. Not only does it result in them struggling academically from just missing that in-person content, but missed class time also results in missed opportunities for students to connect with their peers and their school environment and to grow social emotionally and things like that, and sometimes results in behavioral struggles when they return to the classroom that we're seeing this year. So the key interventions that we're taking for these chronically absent students are one of the main things we do is we spend a lot of time pulling attendance, academic, and behavioral reports from PowerSchool and putting together lists of students that should be monitored. And then we collaborate with the school teams to identify which students that could use some extra additional support from the Student Success Initiative. And then at that point, our Student Success volunteer team makes phone calls to the parents or guardians of those students on the list with the goal of not being punitive in any way, but just forming a relationship with those parents and letting them know the status of their students' attendance, and building a relationship in order to provide connections to the school and school resources. Additionally, depending on the barrier that families express that they're experiencing in regard to attendance, we may suggest connecting them with different resources within the community that could expand upon the resources that the school may not always be able to provide. So we also use messaging for the district-wide side of things to get to everybody in the district, to teach the importance of attendance and the risks of missing just a few days here and there. So for example, we sent this mailer to every family in the district at the beginning of this school year as a part of our messaging campaign. We also sent mailers to the students that were chronically absent last year, which was a little bit more in detail than this one. And we gave flyers to all parents at kinder camp, and in the first week of school sent home to kindergarten parents to emphasize the importance of attendance at all grade levels. And we also sent a letter to the teachers at the beginning of this year and to select teachers before parent-teacher conferences, just to continue keeping attendance at the forefront of everybody's mind right now. So our goals moving forward as the student success team is to continue using those key interventions to support attendance throughout the district. That looks like continuing messaging the importance of daily attendance when students are healthy, and leveraging attendance, academic, and behavioral data to identify the students that need that additional support, continuing to provide support to families in any way that we can. I would love to strengthen our community partnerships for things like mentoring, tutoring, and mental health services that might not be available at this school or that we could strengthen within the school. And that also looks like working with juvenile court services when necessary. Like I feel like everybody's mentioned, this increased focus on social emotional needs is a big aspect of our program as well. We're really working on creating a sustainable attendance plan that can be used year after year and at each school, and that focuses on prevention, and that includes the social emotional team in the district and includes teachers to provide a holistic solution to a student's challenges and barriers to attendance. So some of our goals moving forward here, now that we understand that chronic absenteeism runs so much deeper than attendance, it's important to continue expanding our network of supports for students. So continuing to build our volunteer program that is reaching out to those students, but also hopefully building more of a mentoring program within the district or within the community to support students that need that additional mentor support kind of thing. And also just kind of noting that chronic absence was here before the pandemic. It only became more complicated through the pandemic, and it's not going away without strong systems in place to continue to tackle this issue. So the continuation of a district point person to tackle the student success initiative, kind of to connect the schools to each other and share best practices across the district, but also making sure there's somebody at the district that is keeping track of this data and knows what's going on with absenteeism across the district, I think is really important. And lastly, I would like to consider using federal funding for a tool that could streamline our attendance, academic, social, emotional, and behavior data and intervention tracking systems. Our team spends a great deal of time pulling data from PowerSchool and figuring out where the problems are before we even get to connecting with those families. And I believe we need a more streamlined and efficient approach so that we can spend more time actually connecting with the students and families that are chronically absent. And I believe that that's vital to the sustainability of the Student Success Initiative beyond the AmeriCorps cycle, and just in increasing attendance and reducing chronic absenteeism across the district as we go on. So that's all I have for you all. Thank you so much for taking the time to let me present on this issue, and I appreciate that. If there's any questions, feel free.
Anybody with questions or comments?
A comment, Deb. You know, often, for those of you who've seen lots of districts or been involved in different districts, absenteeism like this often goes unaddressed. It's administrators often don't have time to dig into this level. And that's the great piece of AmeriCorps Vista. If you want to look at our volunteer program that was non-existent, you bring folks in that help us to get things together and put these sustainable structures together, and then we find ways to continue those. So I think you'll find this unique. Certainly it is in other districts, or this type of systems are in other districts, but just super grateful to Martha and her predecessors and the folks that have helped us. This team has been great for several years. Am I right, Marty? 6 years, and it's brought us to this position. And eventually we'll get to the piece where we can make it sustainable. We will have to look at some staffing and that type of thing, but this is something that assistant principals just often do not get to because they're so busy with everyday pieces. But with these systems, just so grateful, and the vision that we've just laid out here is doable for us.
And that's
You
the
have
real
your
hope.
work cut out for you.
Yeah.
It's a big job.
That's the real hope, though, that we can build a sustainable action plan that works for schools, because we know that they're so busy that something that works for them and can be a little bit more efficient on that level is the goal.
Very good.
Do you have an idea of a platform that could be used as opposed to Power School? Are there examples out there that we should be looking at that maybe we need to start talking about investments in?
I have several ideas.
Okay.
I had a call today with a platform that works through Power School, but I don't think that it's going to be a great fit. There's a lot of other platforms that I'm looking at so far that connect with Power School, so they pull the data from Power School, and they have a lot of privacy things in place to make sure that that data is safe. So some ideas are things like, they're called All Here, Everyday Labs is another one, and Panorama is my personal favorite. Also Kickboard. I'm looking at a lot of different things, but just having these conversations a lot over the past few months.
Okay. So maybe that's something we need to be looking at down the road for sure.
Thank you, Martha.
Can I just add
Yes.
a couple comments? Martha, you know, she's not bragging about herself, but she's really brought a new level to this, the district-wide messaging, the postcards, she's really kind of artistic in creating a format that's very appealing. She and I talked a lot about this kind of mixed messaging of stay home when you're sick, but come to school all the time. And she's been wonderful at that balance. And the partnership, she mentioned it with juvenile court, is really beneficial, more than not just in the chronic attendance issue, but also in some of our other discipline issues. It's getting to the level of the juvenile court system so that it's a community partnership, and how can we support these students. The social emotional piece, also she has connected with Jessie, our director of social emotional support, and is keeping the counselors in the loop about these students, because this really is a symptom of other things happening. You know, we thought we could just tackle this easily, and now we're realizing how complicated it is. So I'm just very appreciative of Martha and what she's bringing to this program this year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Next, we'll take a look at our emergency protocols for the district. Stephanie Hillig, our Abaya Judd principal. Boy, you look like you came prepared, Stephanie.
She's always prepared.
I'm always prepared, don't let go without it. So, okay, Whit, will you be my Vanna? You don't need to stand yet, not yet. So, good evening. I feel like you guys have sat for an hour and 45 minutes, so we need to do a stretch break, but I'll plug away for you. So, yes, as Deb said, I'm Stephanie Hillig, and I am the principal at Abaya Judd. And I'm presenting tonight because I had the pleasure of writing this manual, which is gigantic. The school manuals are not that large, just so you know. That's like a master. So only myself and maintenance have the masters. So I'll explain to you what that means here in a minute. Apparently I am the slide clicker. Did not know that. Okay. So really at the school level, this is going to be a brief overview of what we do and how we prepare our students and our staff for an emergency situation. And I'm going to try to weave in kind of what we've done with COVID throughout. When these plans were developed, obviously we did not have a pandemic going on. And so the first emergency response notebook that was written, that I was involved with writing, was actually in Marana Unified School District before I even moved up to Prescott. So that was, we're looking at almost 18 years ago. And so really the hot topics there were intruders on campus, those kinds of things, school shootings, those kinds of things were our main focus, and they still really are prevalent in this emergency response manual. Some of the state requirements that we have is that we have to have evacuation and evacuation plans for our students. So an evacuation plan is broken into two parts. There's a building evacuation and a site evacuation. Site evacuation means that we have to actually leave the site and we have to go to an alternative location to do a reunification process with our students and our families. A building evacuation means that perhaps like at Prescott High School, we would evacuate. When I was here, we had 7 different zones that we would evacuate to. So not all students are in one spot. Not sure if you saw on the news not too long ago, maybe a couple weeks ago, one of the schools had a bomb threat. And they evacuated all the students to the back of the bleachers on the football field. Big, giant no-no. Lots of grief and lots of emails were flying on our side from the health and safety side. You don't ever want to put all your students in one location. That's a very, very big no-no. So at Abaya Jed, we have 4 different locations that we evacuate our students to. So these are all things that you have to be thinking about and you have to be planning for. Then we have 2 evacuations. We have one that's called a shelter in place or a lockout. This is where we lock everybody out of our building. All exterior doors are locked. For Prescott High School, I'll use this as an example since we're here. Students could still, as needed and necessary, go from classroom to classroom within these hallways, but they can't go outside of the building. So for example, if Camille had a class in Rue Street Theater, and then she would come up here for science, she would be in a lockout situation. She would have to stay put out in Rue Street Theater until the lockout was completed. So students can use the restrooms, those kinds of things. That's when there's an emergency in the community. So something out there is not safe. I will tell you, when I was the proud principal at Granite Mountain Middle School, we had these all the time because we had a dear friend called Betty the Bobcat. Betty the Bobcat would like to visit our students. So we would have to do a shelter in place or a lockout. Marty Reed, I think, was my assistant principal many a time, so we did that. Or we would have Harry the Javelina. Or one time, just one, we had Monty the Mountain Lion. So we had all sorts of visitors that would cause a lockout. So not necessarily always a big, bad, scary person, sometimes a big, bad, scary animal. So a lockdown drill, these are a little bit more intense. That means there's an emergency situation on our campus. This is where kids are in hiding, lights are out, everything is quiet, and there's absolutely no movement on campus. So this is what we're required to do. Every month we are required to do a fire drill. And so that we have to log. We keep those logs in our handy dandy notebook. And so the fire marshal comes and checks to make sure we're doing those monthly fire drills. Those are the building evacuations. The site evacuations, we partner with our transportation department, and we get to do 2 bus evacuations. We do one usually each semester. And so transportation comes, they put all the kids on buses, they go through what happens in an emergency on a bus, kids get off the bus. Sometimes they do a little loop just to kind of get the kids familiar with the bus. Then we have to do 2 lockdowns per year. Again, we usually try to do those once a semester, and 2 shelter in places or a lockout. So at Abaya Jed, the way that we do these drills is we usually piggyback them. So we have, for example, a fire drill, and then we come back in and we'll do a lockdown, or we'll do a shelter in place, so that we can communicate with the kids about the lockdown drills and the emergency drills that we need to do and how we prepare them for it. So lots of different ways that we can do those drills on campus, but that seems to be the least disruptive because you are pulling those kids, like I said, once a month for those fire drills. Okay, so how do we prepare for these? So we basically look at this diagram here, and we have 4 processes. And mitigation Mitigation, mitigation. I was gonna start tallying how many times Alexa said that word, because in her presentation, that is all about mitigation. So our big partners with mitigation were our own maintenance department and the police department and the fire department. They helped actually develop the notebook, and we do tweaks on it. We did the last tweak on it a year ago. So it's oh, I thought I clicked the slide. Now we also partner a lot with the health department. That is a huge partnership in our mitigation. For preparedness, okay, so here, every room in PUSD should have one of these. And attached to it are our little green symbols and red and yellow that we use for attendance. And then we also have the directions. What do you do for a shelter in place? What do you do for a lockdown, for a building evac? So they're all right there. Why do we do that? Because we are preparing, which is where I'm at here, we are preparing everybody. If the teacher's not in the classroom and there's an emergency, those kids better know how to do it. Here's the great thing about PUSD. The drills and the procedures from kindergarten through 12th grade are exactly the same. With the partnership that we have with Prescott Police Department, not only are ours the same, but Humboldt's are very, very similar, and so are all the charter schools. Right now we're working with Officer Sutton with the Prescott Police Department. We have a great relationship with him as well as with Sergeant Scott, and they have carried over all of our responses and all of our procedures to the community. So churches are doing it, different charter schools, private schools, everybody. And I went off. Oh, there we go. Oh. Oh, is that you? Oh, good.
She's keeping it alive.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So we've talked a lot about mitigation. We've talked a lot about preparedness. One of the things that we talked about, Alexa brought up, is kind of what we're doing at Abaya Judd with the seating charts. So if a kid is in Miss Williams' class, for example, and then they go over to Miss Stump's class, the seating chart is exactly the same, so that we are mitigating the number of students that would be considered a close contact. So that's kind of how we're doing it. Right now, we are talking about our response. What is our response to an emergency situation? It can be our response to something like an unruly student on campus. It can be a response to an intruder on campus. So this notebook, oh, Vanna, thank you. This notebook has in here all these lovely tabs, and you can easily go to a tab and it'll tell you what to do if you have a weapon on campus. It'll tell you, and it's a checklist, very, very simple. What do you do if you have cyberbullying? That was brought up. All the social media was brought up. Referring to our policies and our procedures with Title IX, that was brought up earlier. All of those things have to do with our emergency response protocol. So everything we're doing in our school district really is a foundation of what's in this notebook. Then we get into recovery. You heard Mr. Neely talk a little bit about how are we recovering from the pandemic? Well, Fridays they're doing enrichment and interventions. That is really a K-12. I did not know they were doing that at the high school until tonight. So kudos to you, Mr. Neely, for getting that into place. But I think at every level, that is something we're looking at. How are we recovering and helping get our students to where they need to be for their next step, whatever that is, next grade level, or in their case, career or college. So we lean heavily again. PUSD maintenance was absolutely amazing. And when we started coming back to school with helping us with the plexiglass and helping us rearrange our classrooms and doing all sorts of things, the community support that we received, again, amazing. And then, of course, our district office. When we had a question or a problem, we resolved it. And one of the biggest things that we did to help us with this recovery was hire someone like Alexa Scholl and getting her in here. So we have all sorts of different ways to look at this. You know, I could give you a scenario of what do you do when there's a school shooting on campus and how do we go through all these processes. But I felt like for our mindset tonight and the other presentations, this is just kind of a culminating way to bring everything that everybody talked about. You know, Stacy brought up the fact that Prescott High School has now a single point entry. Most of our buildings have that right now. And that was a huge mitigation strategy that I think Joe and I talked about when he was at Mile High and I was at Granite 15 years ago. You know, those are all things that took some time, but we got there and we needed to get to where we're at. So I know you guys have been sitting for a long time. This is just a very, very quick and brief overview. I would be happy to come in and do anything in more detail for you. But one of the best things to do to really understand this plan, and Joe, I don't know how you want to pull this one off, but I will propose, is a tabletop drill. If you do a tabletop drill, you would see, without actually having to put into physical action, how our school district responds to things and how we would, you know, play through some sort of a scenario. So I have a bunch of tabletop activities. I joked at a DLT meeting, which was way back when the pandemic first started, and said this is kind of funny because we did a tabletop drill on a pandemic when I was at a consortium meeting, and I said we should have done that here in PUSD, but who would have ever thought that here we are, because I can tell you that tabletop drill was nothing compared to what actually happened. But it got our brains thinking in the right direction. So a tabletop drill is always something good for the board to see. If you ever wanted to do that or be a part of it, I would be happy to orchestrate that for you. So.
Thank you, Stephanie. Any
You're welcome.
questions?
I have 2 questions. So you mentioned a lot of, well, first of all, thank you, because that is
You're welcome.
a lot of work. And you mentioned that you brought a lot of that with you from Marana 18 years ago. So I'm curious, when was this manual established, and how often is it reviewed, and how is it reviewed?
So that's a great question. So I wrote it initially in Marana, and when you write one of these, you write it for that community. Mm-hmm. So this is not Marana's. My daughter's actually a teacher in Marana, and they still do the yellow, red, and green cards, but that's really a national program that Marana adopted. So when Kevin Kapp hired me back 16 or is it 17 now? 16 years ago, I think. That was one of the things that I was asked to do, was to develop this plan. And so at that time, I got together with some fire department here, the police department, and we came together, and there was already one started here. I think Jay Collier maybe started one years ago. And so we just kind of built on what policies and procedures we already had in place. But the state, about 12 years ago, came out with a template, and you had to follow this state template. 2 years ago, the state revised the template, and so that's when we got a committee with community members back together in Prescott Police Department and rewrote or tweaked. We really didn't rewrite it, we just tweaked the plan that we have in place now. So this one is just barely 2 years old. I would say maybe a year and a half.
Okay, so do we schedule regular reviews of this, like 3 years or whatever, or is it just when the state releases updates?
So that's when we revise the whole thing, because we have to submit it. So yes, but as a part of the Northern Arizona Consortium, we are constantly talking about different sections of it and making tweaks and adjustments to it. And so I would bring that back and we would discuss that at DLT kind of thing. But so like when we tweaked it 2 years ago, the I Love You Guys Foundation was just starting, and we adopted some of their terminology based on the request of Prescott Police Department. Mm-hmm. So it's just kind of, it's a living document that as situations happen, so like right now, the whole section on the pandemic now has just a link to the health and safety guidelines and protocols that Alexa and all of us wrote over the summer. So it's kind of like ongoing. It's not something that should ever just sit on a shelf. You'll also find in that agendas for like staff meetings. So one of the times that we really rely on this notebook is unfortunately when we have a death or a student death especially. because it's such an emotional time. And it's really, really clear on the steps you got to go through and how quickly you've got to get a team, a crisis team, in for those students and staff that need it. So it's really a fluid kind of thing. But as far as sitting and going through page by page, only when the state tells us to,
Okay,
honestly.
wonderful. And then my other question is just related to just your experience, having obviously spent time in the district at different schools and developed or worked on developing this and sharing about it. I'm curious, what's one area that you think we're really strong in terms of preparedness or mitigation, and what's an area where some flags are going up for improvement?
I think every time we have an emergency situation or a crisis and we pull this out, we find ways to improve it. You know, you want to be prepared for everything, but you can't be. I think Adam said that perfectly well and right on as he ended his. Nothing is ever going to be perfect. And we try to prepare the best we can for any crisis that happens in our schools. But there's always that something that was just a little bit different. So we find ways to tweak and use the experience that we have. I think whenever there's a crisis in the school, Joe and Marty are first to know, and it seems like instantly DLT is all involved, and we're on the phone going, what do we do? I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've called Joe or Joe's called me and said, we got a situation that we need to start getting our minds going, and I immediately go to this notebook, immediately, because I know there's something in it that can help guide us through that. Anything from, you know, the most recent time was when we had the bus driver. You know, that was a very, very sad crisis for our transportation department, and how do you communicate that? So I think the strongest thing that we have in this notebook and in our plan is the communication piece of it and how we go through the step-by-step processes on any crisis. So.
Can I add to that? I think one amazing strength we have is that we have dedicated an administrator to this who comes to DLT, updates us, goes to the consortium meetings, makes sure, you know, she has a great relationship with the Prescott PD, make sure that those manuals are up to date. I mean, I think Stephanie herself is a huge strength for our district in that she's always keeping us prepared.
And we'll say to a principal, let me get you on the phone with Stephanie, and we'll start hitting some of this. When she was the high school principal, we went through some tough situations. That experience really lends itself to her chatting with a principal who's got a crisis and just sort of saying, here's where you start, here's the piece of paper to put in front of you for this right now, and let me talk you through it. And we all do that together, like Stephanie says. So we are pretty blessed to have Stephanie doing this.
No, thank you. But it really is a team effort, but thank you.
And are there any red flags or yellow flags that we're currently aware of in terms of emergency preparedness?
I would have to say that we were not prepared for COVID. I mean, but we figured it out because of what we had. I mean, I don't think anyone in the world expected what happened, but because of what we did have and the foundations of communication and relationships and the processes that we had already established, we were able to move through that very, very quickly and, in my opinion, very effectively and very efficiently. But did we have a section to say, what are you going to do when school closes and you have to go online? Oh, no, we did not have that section at all. So that right now is the biggest red and yellow flag to me. But I don't think that anyone prepared for that magnitude. We were prepared for a lice outbreak. We were prepared for, you know, a cold or a flu or a measles or a mumps. And I have everything in here on chickenpox. I did not have a single word about COVID. Didn't even know COVID until all of a sudden we were shut down. But because we had those foundational, the foundation to do it, that's why we were moving through it the best we could. And that's why we had a team that everybody could jump in and knew exactly what their role was in that. But so I would have to say now that we have a whole separate notebook on what to do in a major pandemic, now we're ready. But we didn't have that before. But other than that, I think our students know what to do. You know, you hear all the time in these mass shootings, they interview these people that were in the Walmarts or the Starbucks, and they say, how did you know what to do? And they say, because my school taught me. I've been doing these drills since kindergarten. You know, so I think we are really, really preparing our students to know and our staff to know what to do in a crisis. I think the suicide training that Stacy brought up earlier, yeah, we're doing that. We are absolutely doing that every year. And Kelly Bradstreet has a little spreadsheet that we have to make sure that we're holding our teachers accountable to make sure they're doing that. And they know how to handle a situation. So again, I think we're constantly improving, and we're constantly figuring out what we need to do to keep our students mentally and physically safe. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, you know, the pandemic did this to a lot of things, but it's probably nationwide taken our eye off of the active shooter issue a little bit. I don't think PUSD necessarily has taken our eye off of that, but we lost some momentum in terms of we were really moving on, you know, the single point entries. We really do have a single point entry at every school, but there's still a few tweaks we need to do with that. So when, you know, we'll get back with the board on how we would fund some of these extra things and that type of thing. And of course, you know, we still do our drills, but it certainly took a toll on that. And, you know, we still talk with our police department all the time, but maybe we've been talking about other things rather than that active shooter piece. So you know, prior to COVID, people would ask me, you know, like top 3 concerns, and that would be one of them.
Thank you, Stephanie.
You're welcome. All right, let me know if you want me to come back.
Okay. All right. We'll move on to the summary of current events. Joe?
Just a half hour here real quick. We had a little conversation with an astronaut today. Did anyone get a chance to take a look at that? Anybody see our contact with the space station? Super cool. I can just tell you one of the top maybe 3 or 5 things that I've ever participated in PUSD. If you saw it, I mean, it was just, the kids were great. It was super organized. It was 2 years in the making. We did a lot of thanking people at the event, but I want to thank Marty Reed because she's the person who made that happen. And it goes without saying, but I always have to say, nothing happens without Sarah being involved in it. So that was a piece too. Fall sports are in full swing right now. Things are going really well. It's one of our most normal things that's happening right now. And I think we're doing a lot of things as close to normal as you could hope for. And things are going really well in our schools right now. But they're going extra well for our badminton team. They're undefeated. They're ranked #1 in the state. You've heard this before. They are incredible. So keep an eye on them. We'll be watching. Next week is fall break.
And all 3 of the girls are ready.
Just thought you guys.
I checked.
Just thought you might need that reminder in case you forgot. And then finally, this is some pretty sweet news. Maya Caldwell, our grants director, on September 21st, had her baby girls, Addison and Bailey, and they are doing extremely well. And so I was super excited to just share that with the district and the public tonight.
Nice.
Okay. Any board members have anything to share?
I did the QPR suicide prevention training, online training last week or 2 weeks ago. It was excellent, very good. And I think it is really something useful that anybody will gain something from. So really enjoyed that.
Thanks for doing it.
I have something that I will just pass down here. One of the school librarians gave me this little flyer thing that our libraries are looking for some new books. And so I went on to the website that was here, and I went to the website for the schools where I'm the liaison, and I bought a book for each of those schools. So if you're interested, you can take down the website, but don't feel obligated. They're not massively expensive books. It's not like a $300 encyclopedia. Okay, next we move on to the consent agenda. Does pretty basic consent agenda this time. Does anybody have questions or comments on the consent agenda? Only thing I would like to point out, once again, we had 17 different donations this month. Of those, 3 were from foundations, 1 from a church, 1 from an alumni organization, and 12 from individuals in our community. And they amounted to a value of almost $13,000. So again, I want to thank the community for their support. Really is very appreciated. So, okay, if there are no other comments on the consent agenda, could I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
A second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Next item is, may I assume, Sarah, that there is no need for a public hearing?
That is correct.
All right. So that public hearing would have been to review the bond and override that we have from 2015. But since no one requested, we don't have to do it. However, we will ask Brian to give us an update on the progress of the capital improvements that were financed through the bond.
All right. Every year between now and October 31st, we're required to give an update on our bond and override, and this is our annual meeting to do that. So, not a lot to report. We are winding down when it comes to our bond purchases. We've had three issuances. Our last bond monies were issued a year ago, last May. Our bond voter pamphlet, we've been spending money in non-administrative purposes, being technology, energy management, building and ground improvements, and pupil transportation. And then we did have one area that was administrative, and that was for building and renovations, which is what we used to remodel Washington to be our district office. So really, when it comes down to history, our first bond issuance was 7.5 million, then 3.9-ish million, then about 3.3 million, which takes us to all of our money, and we have to spend the last of it a year from this May. We had a BOS committee that met regularly, and really the last bit of money that we have, which is a little bit, right around 1.5 million, the direction that the BOS committee said they'd like to see purchases is in the area of our one-to-one initiative and technology, and then also looking at redoing our tennis courts here at PHS, which will be at the end of maybe possible future projects. So really, when it comes down to last year's expenditures, they all really were in the technology area. We were very fortunate to have the bond money to buy laptops. We bought 1,600 Chromebooks to not only replace ones that came back damaged, but also to lend out to students during our closures and for quarantining. We bought monitors, phones, interactive TVs, document cameras, and really like those document cameras and new laptops were imperative for the teachers providing that distance learning, because a lot of their desktops, well, didn't have cameras and their desktops are not portable. So technology, we had quite a few expenditures. We've spent about 1.5 million in technology over the course since the bond passed. We are allowed flexibility to exceed the pamphlet spending. We can use 10% of each issuance in any areas that we needed. Unfortunately, in our pamphlet, we only had 600,000 going towards technology, and with our one-to-one initiatives, we've had to spend more. So we've spent about 230% of the pamphlet amount. We didn't have any management upgrades or energy management upgrades last year. We did have some education grounds. We bought a security camera. We did finish all of our parking lot pavements that we had started 2 years ago. And so that's what we did in ground and building maintenance. We bought a bus for students with special needs. We spent just over $3 million on buses throughout our bond expenditures. And, hey, I didn't program it to flip like that. I didn't know I could do that. We did not have any administrative building and renovations. That was all taken up by the Washington remodel. So really, when it comes down to it, our future bond expenditures, we have just under 1.5 million left. It's going to really be technology, and then we're going to, toss around the idea of redoing the tennis courts here at PHS. And so really, we have a year and a half to spend the rest of the money. That's about it. A little bit of a sad note is our override details. If you notice, we brought in over the last 5 years, a little bit under $1 million, and unfortunately in this fiscal year, it has dipped down by 1/3, and so it's just under 700,000. Next year, it will go down by another 1/3, and then the year after that, the 23-24, we will get no additional monies for the override due to it not continuing with the vote last November. So. Really, quiet year for bond and override expenditures, and this satisfies our legal requirements by having a presentation. So take any questions, otherwise it's pretty straightforward.
Anybody have any questions? Okay.
It's because bond and overrides they're boring.
Yeah. Thank you, Brian.
I don't think so.
I just like the thing I made flip.
We're so impressed. All right, we'll move on to the study and voting session now. Sarah, can I assume there were no requests to speak? All right, thank you.
Is it too late? 'Cause we have
5 o'clock.
It is too late. Sorry, ladies. All right. The first item is Brian's. Several items are Brian's.
Yeah. Just kind of a high level. This is the time of the year that we're closing out last fiscal year. And so the 3 reports that are in the first voting item, one is our food service annual financial report. Annual financial reports are essentially, the way they differ than budgets is it's the actual expenditure down to the dollar. And so the numbers in that food service financial report is exactly how we spent it in every single coding area. Only thing really to note with our food service AFR was that our food service did a heck of a job in a difficult year providing meals to students and families when we were closed. That is the revenue. We did not stop paying for our food service contract. And we did not lose money last year when it came to our food service. In fact, our food service fund balance ended up being about $150,000 more than was the previous year. And that's just because we met the need of communities for meals. When it comes to the annual financial report, it's a long, nice 10-page document that's very complex. Really what it comes down to is our carry forward for M&O in a year that was lesser of enrollment, it actually went up from the previous year. But with that being said, we also used $1.2 million of the enrollment stability grant to offset first semester staff salaries. Had we not had that ESG grant, our carry forward would have went down by about 20% or about $700,000. So while it did increase going into this year, without that 1.2-ish million, it would have went down for the first time in 6 years. And so from an AFR standpoint, that's really the big takeaway of all of our spending in that document. And then the last AFR that's in that voting item is a school level AFR. It's a new federal mandate from 2 years ago that we have to break down all revenues and all expenditures down to the site level. And the feds will use it however they'll use it, but this is Arizona's answer to that federal mandate. And really, they're not using it right now, but it will come to use at some point. We just don't know what. So that's what that document is. And it's actually a more complex document, but I did take a breakdown of every single one of our sites. And you can see the breakdown of expenditures by those sites. There's more to that AFR than that, but it's just a whole bunch of convoluted numbers that doesn't make a lot of sense. Yeah. This was the best presentation attachment I could give. So those are the FRs. If you have any questions, I can answer them. Otherwise, that's a high level about what we do at this time
Any
of the year.
questions? Would someone offer a motion on the first item there?
I'll move that we approve the 2020-2021 annual financial report and the 2020-2021 food service annual financial report and the 2020-2021 school level annual financial report as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the 2020-2021 annual financial report, the 2020-2021 food service annual financial report, and the 2020-2021 school level annual financial report as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right, finally, Mr. Ortiz E. Davis. Thank you for your patience.
Quite all right. Good evening, PUSD governing board members, staff, teachers, students. I'm here ostensibly to request permission for one of our CTE teachers, Chris Predmore, to take a group of students to the SEMA 2021 conference in Las Vegas, Nevada, and also to introduce myself as the new CTE director for PUSD and Prescott High School. My name is Francisco Nicolas Ortiz Davis, so there will be a test afterwards to see if you can pronounce that, but you can call me Cisco. Students, you can still call me Mr. Ortiz. But so yes, to introduce myself, I am rounding my second month here at PUSD. I come here from Arizona Department of Education, where I worked as the executive director and state advisor for Arizona DECA, one of our CTSOs here in the state of Arizona, and am very, very humbled and very welcomed by the district, and very proud to work with a lot of our students in volunteering with student council. I'm a Rotarian, so I've been working with our Interact students as well, and of course our CTSO, Career and Technical Student Organization here on student organizations here on campus, including Future Business Leaders of America and the rest. So.
Thank you. This is a trip that these kids have been taking for a number of years now. This is not something new, but anybody have any questions about Mr. Ortiz Davis's request?
Trip runs from November 2nd to the 5th. They'll be taking a district van. I think there's up to 4 students. I don't believe that Mr. Predmore has secured permission for all of the students just yet, but like I said, it'll be up to 4 students, and they'll be staying at Circus in Las Vegas.
Miserable trip. All right, could I get a motion?
Motion to approve an out-of-state travel request from Mr. Francisco Ortiz E. Davis, Director. That's a lot. Director of Career and Technical Education for Mr. Chris Predmore, CTE Automotive Technologies teacher, to take up to 4 students to the 2021 SEMA show in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Is there a second?
Second?
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we approve an out-of-state travel request from Mr. Francisco Ortiz Davis, Director of Career and Technical Education, for Mr. Chris Predmore, CTE Automotive Technologies teacher, to take up to 4 students to the 2021 SEMA show in Las Vegas, Nevada, as presented. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you,
you.
sir.
Thank you.
Michelle.
Good evening, everyone. Cisco is a tough act to follow. So, I'm Michelle Allman. I'm the assistant principal over here at Prescott High School. A little bit about me. So I am a native of Prescott, born and raised. Again, Joe Howard was my middle school principal. And then Adam Neely, our current Prescott High School principal, was my math teacher when I went here. So it's very nostalgic to be back. I have spent the past 6 years in Phoenix at Mountain Ridge High School doing teaching history as well as being the dean of students over there. This is my first year back at Prescott High School and I am thrilled to be home. So part of the reason I am here is our foreign exchange program. One of my responsibilities as assistant principal is to oversee this program. We currently have one company we are working with, and that is Evacuations. And essentially I work with them to approve foreign exchange students to come here for either a full school year or a semester to study abroad. And as of now, what I am here for you all is to seek approval to have a second foreign exchange company called the MLA. And they will be the second company approved by the board to again send foreign exchange students here. So we will have again an additional company and more students hopefully joining us on behalf of our high school.
All right. So I read through the information, Michelle. Am I correct in reading that this company works with students only from Italy?
Yes.
Okay. And that the company pays the tuition and makes all arrangements with and for the host families?
Yes, so it's similar to our other program. PUSD gets tuition from these students, and then the companies, specifically MLA, will work with the new Yavapai County coordinator, Mary Devereaux, on finding host families for these kids, and then they work out all the extra expenditures that is needed. And Mary Devereaux actually is also working, she used to work for Evacuations here, so she is very familiar with foreign exchange students, host families, all of that. So she's a great addition to, the MLA family.
All right. Other questions
Yeah,
or
I have
comments?
a couple. Do you, is MLA, have they been doing this for a while? Have you worked with them before?
Yeah, so
Okay.
I actually can call the director, Carson Lagerfield, and so he can answer some of the specific questions about how long they've been doing it.
Oh, that's
We
fine.
have not worked with them before.
Okay.
Part of our process to get to you guys is that they have to go through an extensive recommendation. So they have to send us recommendation letters from various schools that they have worked with.
Okay.
And so we received those as well as sending us the information I assume you guys have in front of you on their business model, you know, how, like, just their mission, their goals, all that. So that is something that we go through as well. And then we, as an admin team, look at that in addition before proving, like, sending it to you guys. So yeah, I can call Carson if you guys have specific questions about MLA. He's more than welcome to answer them.
If you've worked with them, I'll take your word and understanding on that. I'm curious, who handles the immigration? Does PHS issue the I-20s and DS 2019? So are you the PDSO
Yes.
or RO here?
Yes,
Okay.
as of like 2 months ago. Yeah, Clark
Okay.
Tenney kind of showed me the ropes with that. So that's
Okay.
actually something I will be doing.
Are
So
you-
I am the PDSO. I'll be issuing the I-20s.
Okay.
And then again, similar to the Educations, it'll be a similar process. We get the application, we review it. Similar with Educations, MLA does require that all foreign exchange students that go through their company are English proficient. And that's
Okay.
something that we here at Prescott High School also require. So that's in addition. One thing I really loved about the MLA program is that unlike other foreign exchange companies that, you know, students come to them and say, I express interest in coming to America, MLA actually has been working with these Italian students and their families for many years, leading up to being placed in the United States. And so they have very solid relationships. Even before they join the MLA program, they have to be interviewed and pass a substantial interview process with them to even be in their actual program before even thinking about coming over here to us.
Do they take a standard English test, or is that interview what they use to prove proficiency?
Test and the interview as well. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the last thing I guess I would ask is just, so I've had experience working with overseas agents in my career, just making sure that the information they share, that you have very strong control over the information this company shares with the families and the students they work with. That was always a tricky issue. And making sure there's real strong review of that before anything goes out. That's because I noticed in there that they will do the recruiting, if for lack of a better word, they'll do the recruiting of the students in Italy. So we just want to make sure they're telling them the truth about what coming to Prescott and PHS is like. So
yeah, and I to speak to that, I think Mary, the Yavapai coordinator, will be very beneficial in that area to just really express what Prescott is like, specifically our high school, especially since she's had experience with our other foreign exchange program. Yeah. Another part of MLI I really loved is that they do monthly check-ins with the kids, and then they definitely can, you know, check in with the families back home on their status and progress, which is, again, is something I think is wonderful, especially, you know, coming to Prescott, it is a shock for a lot of foreign exchange students, especially if they've never been to the United States, you know, or if they've been to like LA, they're expecting something like that. Yeah. And so I really feel like this is a great company. They're on very solid ground. And I think what really makes them, could be, again, successful here is that personal relationship with the families prior to sending the kids here.
Right, yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Other questions? Okay, could I get a motion, please?
I'll move that we approve an agent agreement between Study World Corporation, doing business as Move Language Ahead, and Prescott Unified School District.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve an agent agreement between Study World Corporation, DBA Move Language Ahead, and Prescott Unified School District as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Well, Brian, would you like to talk to us about the School Facilities Board?
I love whenever I can bring this. It means that we're getting good stuff without having to work with others.
Works for me.
So for the last 6 months, I've been working with our School Facilities Board liaison to show the need to have our main gym here at PHS and our auxiliary gym bleachers redone. Originally, the main gym were to be slated to be reconditioned, and in those conversations about warranties and things like that, they have agreed now to replace both of them. And so far they've agreed to go to a design, which we have already, which is done, and now they have agreed to pay for procurement, which essentially means we use a company called Sunnypath Associates, and they will help us with the procurement to go out to bid for our bleacher project, and I think it will probably be about $350,000 to $400,000 to replace those bleachers. And when after the procurement, they'll be awarded a vendor who would get the RFP. They'll come back to the board, and then the governing board, the School Facilities Board, will approve the $350,000 to $400,000 to be spent to replace the gym. So one step closer to new bleachers.
I asked you this the other day, but nobody else was there. So will these bleachers be in the same format as what we have now?
I Yeah, you know, they're not ADA compliant right now, and that is the big
Okay,
thing.
yeah.
And it has to do with railings within the aisles.
Mhm.
And so, you know, they'll be comparable, but they'll also not be grandfathered in because they're being replaced, and so they'll have to comply to the recent regulations. So they'll be in the same spot, but won't be exactly what we're used to.
Okay. Questions?
I'll just comment, this has probably been more like a decade in the discussions. No kidding.
The auxiliary gyms are original
Yeah.
Yeah.
to PHS.
We've had problems with these bleachers for
Yeah.
around a decade.
Yeah. So, all right, is there a motion? Number 4.
Motion to approve the School Facilities Board terms and conditions for acceptance of monies from the Building Renewal Grant Fund. Award contract number BRG PROC 00079 for procurement services to replace the main and auxiliary gym bleachers at Prescott High School.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the School Facilities Board award for bid of the bleacher project at Prescott High School as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right. The next one is, you remember last month we had those million policy advisories? Well, Marty is gonna tell us about those.
As presented, no,
I will be saying that shortly.
It's a little complex now. Things got tricky.
These are quite a few policy revisions, primarily due to the last legislative session. We're bringing these to you for second read. However, we are asking you to exclude 4 of them because of the recent ruling regarding banning a mask mandate and not being able to require staff to be vaccinated has been ruled unconstitutional. So we are asking you not to approve those 4 because those are now kind of defunct, so to speak. And then later on, you'll see there's a first read on a couple policies to kind of clean up because of that ruling as well. So I'll entertain specific questions if you had questions about any of the changes that were recommended based on the last legislative session.
Are there any that you think we should be particularly aware of?
I kind of reviewed them again. There's quite a few that I'm going to need to talk to our principals about. There's the ruling about no out-of-school suspension for kiddos 6 and under, which rarely happens anyway, but you know, just want to make sure our elementary principals are aware of that. There's some vaccine updates on the regular vaccines, not COVID, that the nurses are going to need to know about. There's a ruling that or a law that we need to post a poster about how you could reach someone to report child abuse. There's a requirement on our high school IDs to have a suicide prevention number on the ID. So we'll be working with the high school to get a sticker or something that we can put on the IDs for this year, and then the company will put it on for us next year. I mean, I don't think there's anything, you know, there's the suicide prevention training that we're required to do, an update on what a textbook means. That includes the electronic sources that go with the textbook adoption. I don't think there's anything too controversial in any of these, or.
All right, just like the check.
Are we also excluding the blame and judgment?
No, that is part of a law, ARS 41 something, the blame and judgment piece. What's taken away are those kind of 7 criteria of what is prohibited instruction related to that blame and judgment. So the blame and judgment statement is still in there, because that's part of ARS 41, which is not the education code. The education code is ARS 15. So that piece is already in there, and we have to keep that.
Including the 7 criteria for what?
Not the 7
Okay.
criteria. That part's gone.
Okay.
That was part of ARS 15 code that has been ruled unconstitutional.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, it was the vaccines, the masks, and also that prohibited instruction.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right.
If, just,
Yeah.
not- there's probably not an answer to this, but if the Supreme Court decides in January or whenever it is that they're going to decide this, that, okay, we were wrong, it is constitutional, do we have to do this all over again?
Just those 4.
Yeah.
Just those 4?
They'll bring it
Okay.
up then.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, that makes sense.
Yeah, the
Sorry.
other ones on curriculum and
They're-
suicide prevention and stuff.
Okay,
They weren't
All right.
excluded, so.
okay.
All right. Would anyone like to make a motion?
At number 5.
Yep, number 5.
I move that we consider adopting proposed changes in Policy Services Advisory, Volume 33, Number 3, Number 680-711, from July 2021, excluding policy advisories 687, 690, 700, and 708, except JLCBE, due to a recent ruling that these laws are unconstitutional.
Is there a second?
Perfect.
It's been moved and seconded that we consider adopting proposed changes in Policy Services Advisory, Volume 33, Number 3, Number 680-711, from July 2021, excluding policy advisories 687, 690, 700, and 708, except JLCB-E, due to a recent ruling that these laws are unconstitutional. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Number 6, Clark, you want to talk to us about salary schedule?
Sure, you bet. This one, ooh, hello, that's. I'll stand right back here. This one's pretty easy. You've got a new HR director, so we didn't do what we typically have done in the past, which is present a salary increase for current staff and a salary scale increase at the same time. Salary increase for current staff, of course, helps us retain great staff that we've got, quality staff that we've got, and an increase to the scale where we would place new staff helps us attract new folks. So what's been typical in the past is say there's been a 5% increase for current staff, we would put about half that amount into, well, not about, half that amount into the salary scales. And so that's what we're proposing that you consider this evening. Questions about that?
Any questions?
Not doing this puts us in a situation where staff that were hired this year or before are substantially ahead of similarly experienced staff that we would have hired in the future.
Is there a motion? Number 6.
I'll move that we approve a, 2% increase to each non-301 PUSD salary and wage placement scale, except for 301 eligible employee groups.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve a 2% increase to each non-301 PUSD salary and wage placement scale, except for 301 eligible employee groups. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. All right, Clark.
Okay, so I think we're on number 7 now?
We are.
Okay, great. So it seems like just about every year the state of Arizona says, let's try this with our English language learners. Let's try something new. We'll have the teachers do this, we'll have the kids do this, we'll have this much instructional time, et cetera. We've come up with a new model again this year. It's got a simple name, Structured English Immersion Targeted Instructional Model. And I think what they ought to do is if the kids who are in the classes can say that, then they graduate them out of the class. But that's not what we're doing. What we're doing instead is that kids get an hour of targeted SEI, Structured English Immersion, each day. And in addition to that, there's significant, used to be twice a year testing that went along with this. There's significant periodic testing that goes along with this. We have 2 great ELL teachers that PUSD has hired. One works with our K through 4 kids, and one works with our 6 through 12 kids, and they're finding particularly at the elementary level that our K through 4 teacher is just overwhelmed with the number of students. We have many more students than we've had in past years. Part of that is just, it's a year where there's more families who are here from Guatemala or the Marshall Islands or Vietnam or Croatia. That's terrific. I love that. That adds diversity to our community and our schools, and it's a great thing. In addition to that, we typically, kids with the instruction that we have provided, we've had a certain number who have exited the program each year. They've learned enough English to be able to test well enough to not have to be a part of that program. In an ensuing year, with the interruptions we had with COVID last year, we had fewer kids exit from the program. So we've got some holdovers, so to speak, from last year that we may not have had otherwise, and a lot of new kids together. The diversity of English language skills in those classes, particularly the elementary level, is a challenge for that one teacher to keep on top of and individualize the instruction appropriately to meet those kids' needs. And so we looked at different solutions for this. The lowest cost solution that we felt would have a good impact on instruction in the classrooms would be to hire another person who's a non-certified teacher but who could be taught to acquire the skills to help these kids out. So a paraprofessional is what we're looking for. There are funds available in ESSER funds. This is a perfect use of ESSER funds in my mind. It's targeting instruction for kids that is needed as a direct result of COVID in many cases. And we're hopeful that this will be a short-term need just this year, but we'll see what happens with numbers next year. If there's a different need, obviously we'd come to you with that in the future. Questions?
Anybody have questions or comments? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve 1.0 full-time exempt English language learner paraprofessional position for grades K through 4 using ESSER 2 funds as presented.
Yep. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve a 1.0 FTE English language learner professional position for grades K through 4 using ESSER funds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. One more, Clark.
Okay. So I have to tell you, I am personally looking forward to the day when we can get through an entire governing board meeting without mentioning the word COVID. Tonight will not be that night. This is another one that's related to COVID in a way. One of the impacts that COVID has had, and we've talked about this in previous board meetings, is that it has reduced our pool of available guest teachers. At the same time, we have more teachers out than usual. Some of that's for COVID, some of it's just out of an abundance of caution, like Alexa was talking about earlier. We're glad when teachers who have a sore throat and aren't feeling great stay home. We want that probably in most years, but we especially want that this year. Anyhow, the combination of those two things has led to a situation where sometimes we don't have a teacher to cover a classroom, a substitute teacher to come in, and so we're covering internally. And that's terrific that we have a certified teacher who knows the kids in a lot of cases, go right across the hall to help out, but it puts a lot of stress on a teacher who has a specific amount of time during the day to prepare for their next class, to use the restroom, things like that. And we say, no, I need you to go across the hall and teach U.S. history instead, that type of a thing. The teachers have been stepping up and doing that, but it's been a difficult situation. At our last board meeting, the governing board asked us to, as a district administrative team, to consider additional solutions to help people out. So in addition to the designated guest teachers that you approved last time around, and we're looking at an increase in our substitute long-term, particularly long-term substitute teacher pay coming up that we would bring to the board in a future board meeting. Here's another solution that we're looking at, and it's compensating teachers. This is a common thing in many other school districts. PUSD has not done this, at least for quite some time. It's been pretty rare to ask, you can't have your prep time, Mrs. Reed, we need you to go over and teach Mrs. Torres's English class, that type of thing. But this year, it's actually quite common, so we need to do something about this. As teachers are asked to okay, you couldn't grade that then, take it home tonight, work at home, etc. We feel it's necessary to provide some compensation. As I got with our chief financial officer, who was for about 15 minutes not working on some kind of report for the state of Arizona, he figured out for us the average roughly hourly salary for our teachers is, what did we come up with, Brian? $29.86. Yeah, something like that. And we said, perfect, what if we set this at $30 an hour? That seems to be reasonable, since that's what a typical teacher makes. So that's what we're coming to you with as a proposal, is that starting in the second quarter, we track when Mr. Neely has to ask Mrs. Smith to cover for Mr. Jones' class, and if she does that for an hour, we'd track that and pay her for 1 hour. If that happens 5 times over the course of a pay period, she'd get paid for 5 hours.
Other questions or comments?
My question is just, I know we talked about it at the last meeting, but I mean, we're seeing things cool off a little bit, so I'm wondering if we're a little behind the game on this, and if there's any possible way to do retroactive pay or compensation.
Yeah, it's a great question. We looked at that as a possibility. Tracking that would be essentially impossible, is what we came up with. So we'd love to have done that. We just need to say, in past years it was voluntary, first quarter was voluntary, but we've assured folks that we were coming to the board with this a couple of weeks ago, and people are enthusiastic about that and understand that to this point we've been doing what we can, piecing things together, and we're looking at moving forward with this. Really great question. Just logistically, it would be essentially impossible.
Okay.
And even if we ended up paying a teacher once that didn't do it, or there's not documentation,
right,
it's get the public funded.
Yeah, understood. The long-term subs, guest teachers, were we able to hire all of them?
So you approved 8 at our last board meeting. 4 of those have been hired and are working in our schools so far. There's 2 at Prescott High School, 1 at Mile High, and 1 at Taylor Hicks so far. We have had applicants for the other positions, but there hasn't been quite the pinch in some of the other schools such that the principals have felt that, yep, here's our person and we need him right now. So that's still an option that's available to them. I'm sure we'll have folks taking advantage of that, principals taking advantage of that soon in some cases. But yep, 4 of the 8 have been hired already.
And are we seeing sorry, Sarah?
I just said thank you.
Are we seeing an impact with that already? Has that helped?
Mr. Neely, maybe you could speak to that. You're the school who was impacted the most negatively prior to that and has maybe benefited the most from that so far.
Yeah, so we got 2 out of 3 hired, and I think it's been extremely beneficial. I mean, I saw a change in the morning email of, hey, we need coverage for, by a big piece. Does it still happen? Yeah,
sure.
We are still running into it. One of them ended up being a long-term solution for a math teacher who had resigned due to some complications, so that has been a huge help.
Okay.
And then the other one is just picking up everywhere she can. So we got really lucky. We got 2 outstanding people right now who have made I think it's been a big positive impact, and I think it's eased some of the stress that staff was feeling trying to pick up, and because a lot of it ends up being the same people offering over and over again, and so that was wearing them out. But do we still have a couple days a week where we have something uncovered? Yeah, we do.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
I know my wife comes home at night and cries herself to sleep less often than she used to.
But you don't care if we pass this.
I'm totally kidding. She actually, her prep hours at a weird time, and she's rarely had the opportunity to do that. And she rarely cries about anything.
I think, our teachers are working so hard already. I hate to ask them to give up their prep, but if they do, there ought to be some compensation.
Right, that's kind of our last safety net for
Yeah,
having, the inmates running the asylum, Lord of the Flies in 3rd grade, is bringing somebody across the hall. We don't do that unless we absolutely have to.
I think it's time for you to go home
But
today.
if we have to, it seems
He's
fair
working on
to
hour
compensate.
15 here. No dinner.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
motion to approve hourly compensation for teachers who must give up lesson preparation time to cover for absent colleagues as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve hourly compensation for teachers, excuse me, who must give up lesson preparation time to cover for absent colleagues. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Coming up the 19th of October is the yearly Yavapai County ASBA meeting, to which we are all invited. And we need to decide whether to elect a county delegate to represent our governing board and to vote. That will be a virtual meeting. It will not be in person. So, comments? I will be out of state. I intend to attend by phone, but I would not be the best choice for a delegate, just FYI.
Yeah, it might be the first meeting for most of you, but I mean, it's similar to the state meetings, but just generally talking about issues in the county, and not a huge deal. It's different virtually for sure, but we'll get back to regular meetings, I think, but this one's definitely virtual, so it's a pretty low-key duty, I would say.
Is there a volunteer?
I was planning to attend that,
Good.
so I can certainly do
Okay,
that.
terrific.
Unless Connie or Sarah want to do it.
No, I think you should do it.
Okay. Okay.
Do we need to vote on that then? Andy volunteered. I move that we elect Andy Freyer as our county delegate to represent the Prescott Unified School District Governing Board and to vote in ASBA virtual county meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Yeah.
It's been moved and seconded that we elect Andy Freyer, a county delegate, to represent the Prescott Unified School District Governing Board and to vote in ASBA's virtual county meeting. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. During that meeting, there will be a vote on a bylaw change for ASBA. And what it amounts to is that currently ASBA has a caucus that combines Hispanic and Native American Indian issues. They would like to split those into separate caucuses. So that's what this next item is about. And if you decide to approve this next item, it would give direction to Sarah to cast our vote.
Okay.
So
So are we voting tonight or at the meeting on that?
we're voting now.
Okay.
You're
So-
giving Sarah direction of how you'd like to vote.
Okay.
And I will again
Okay.
do this one. I move that we give direction on voting on one bylaw change proposal from the Arizona School Boards Association. This bylaw proposal by the ASBA Board of Directors must be approved by 2/3 of the ASBA member boards to be effective. After discussion, we will vote to give direction to Sarah to vote in the manner the board has approved. The following is the bylaw proposal to be considered and acted on. Is there a second to this proposal?
Well,
Kind of.
what is it? I want to.
It's to split the Hispanic and Native American Indian caucuses.
So you could say what Deb said, as presented in the relevant information, and that would follow what the ASBA's recommendation is. Just trying to simplify. We could probably simplify
So,
that wording.
well, yeah, and what I read basically is that since there is a black caucus
Yes.
within ASBA that has one designated delegate, but the Hispanic and Native American Indian caucuses alternate a delegate. So
Yeah.
it's giving a dedicated delegate to each of those, to the Hispanic caucus and to the Native American Indian caucus, is what I understood.
On the
Is that correct?
ASBA Board of
On the
Directors.
ASBA board.
So you could use Deb's motion so far and just add something like affirmative to the relevant information, and Sarah could word that the way that, if you're in
Affirmative
agreement.
to the relevant information.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
I second
Okay.
motion.
All right. It's been moved and seconded what I said, Sarah. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, Brian, do you have exciting news for us on the school board summary budget report?
As presented.
Thank you. What about the ESSER COVID information?
Actually, our ESSER coordinator, Darla Eastman, put together a little video to not only introduce herself, but also tell where we're at. And I think she did a good job, but I haven't seen it.
Okay.
Hello, board members and friends of the audience. Thank you so much for inviting me via Zoom to the board meeting. My name is Darla Eastman. I'm your ESSER Grants Coordinator for Prescott Unified School District, and I'm new to the PUSD family, but not new to grants. I've been grants manager for over 25 years with federal service, a little bit with the city of Prescott, and some time with my tribe up in Northern California. So I'm here today to give you a little update on ESSER 1 and 2 and give you some more information on ESSER 3. So what is ESSER? Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, and it's designated to support K through 12 schools in response to the COVID-19 pandemic that is administered by the Arizona Department of Education. This year, we received funds in 2020, and we expended those funds with custodial and maintenance supplies, equipment, sanitation and signage, distance learning curriculum, and planning. Most of all, technology. Chromebooks and hotspots were purchased. Most of those funds have been expended to date. So a little bit more about ESSER 1, just real quick. A little over 500 or a little under 500,000 was allocated to address the impacts of 19, kind of like a seed money to get us started. And then ESSER 2 came, and we got a little bit more in that allocation. Same methodology as ESSER 1, but realizing that the Chromebooks, how much we needed with the Chromebooks and how much more salaries we're needing. And so far, we've expended just a small portion of that, but we have all of that ready and raring to go, ready to get spent. So a little bit about ESSER 3. This one has the twist to it. It's the same methodology as ESSER 1 and 2, but 20% of that portion of the allocation is designated to reduce learning loss. The allocation is a lot more because we needed a lot more for keeping up with that learning loss and the items that we need to purchase and do those kinds of things for learning loss. And I'll get into that to the next slide. The allocation, again, 4.4, our expenditures so far, spring break and summer school salaries. So a part of the ESSER 3 is to make sure that we address that 20% in learning loss and the options. We've come up with some options to address that so far. And some of those items are such as expanded summer school learning opportunities, additional technology in infrastructure, parent and student outreach, counseling, and expanded after-school programming for special education students. But a lot of our funds are focused on social and emotional and mental health services and supplies. So here is a couple of tools that I want to share with you that we've come up with so far. One is a web page to add to our website and get the information out to our community. Put out the purpose and a little more information about ESSER 1, ESSER 2, and 3. What are desired outcomes, what we plan to achieve, and also to get the information from the community through this survey. And I will share with you a little more with this survey. So here's the ESSER 3 funding stakeholder survey. Here are the allowable uses for ESSER 3 funds, and so that can kind of give you a guidance on when you're taking the survey. We're asking you, who you are taking the survey. Are you a parent? Are you a teacher, a student? What part of the community are you a member of? And it also goes through with questions about, what sort of things that you're looking forward to see the funds being spent on, providing instructional materials, digital resources, more IT support, tutoring, again, digital resources. So there's a whole long list of things and then we're rating them from lowest to your highest priority in your mind. So these are the new tools that we have out there to get community input. And so I hope that gives you a little more update with ESSER 1, 2, and 3. And here is my contact information if you want to give me a call or send me an email about ESSER grants. And I very much appreciate you having me here this evening. And if you want to invite me back for more information later on, I'd be very, very happy to do so. So have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Darla's credit, we asked her to do that yesterday afternoon at about
That was good. Thank you. Okay. Anybody have questions for Brian on that? Okay.
Who is going to determine, okay, let's talk about the survey. I understand that, but who's going to complete the survey?
Stakeholders, parents, business
Yeah.
members,
You're
community
just gonna
members.
send it out
And we're gonna
to-
do a separate one for teachers and staff.
Okay.
She's creating we have to create a whole website about ESSER.
Yeah.
Information on our website, and so it will be there for any community member to click on and take it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Marty, the BGB,
Oh, yeah. First read policy number 12.
yeah,
It's just a couple of minor tweaks on the policy just to clean it up based on this unconstitutional ruling. So it's very
Okay.
self-explanatory. I believe it's just 2 policies and a regulation for your information.
okay, thank you.
So it'll be back next month, maybe with some changes from the Supreme Court's findings.
Yeah, okay. Anybody have suggestions for future agenda items? Okay, meeting dates, our next study and voting session will be Tuesday, November 2nd at 5 o'clock back in the PUSD district office. We need to set up a November board retreat. I'm trying to make that as difficult as possible. I will be out of the country from the 5th of November to the 5th of December, so we'll have to figure out when we can make that happen. Also,
Sarah will be in touch with dates
Yeah.
that work for board members.
I had told you that we would try to finish up our goals today, but I decided to try to do that at the retreat instead of trying to hash through it. Our meetings are long enough already. And finally, with that, when I attended the law conference a couple weeks ago, I spoke with a number of the Prescott Valley Board and their superintendent, and I think we are, with your approval, that we will invite them to join us for our January retreat and to discuss items of mutual interest and concern. So, ladies, teachers, administrators, have a wonderful fall break. Enjoy yourselves. And then that ASBA meeting on the 19th, so we're adjourned. Aaron and Whitney and